Chapter 1022. Ah, again? What else? Are you going to spend the night like this? Lu Fei pointed at the invincible silver spear that he was still holding. But you can't do it anymore. Lu Fei held the railing again, bent down, turned her back to Qin Guang and twisted her waist. The old way, let's carry out plan B. Ah? The lubricant is in my bag. I bought it from an adult store with my face covered before coming here. It's so embarrassing. Hurry. Oh, okay. Qin Guang didn't expect her to be so well prepared. Another hour passed. Qin Guang rolled his eyes, suddenly feeling that life was dull, everything in life was just a passing cloud, and his heart was solemn. Lu Fei turned around and scolded, "Can you step back a little? My stomach is full of anger." Qin Guang hurriedly took a step back. There was a pop. Then there was a thump from the pool. Qin Guang didn't know what was going on at first. He only cared about helping Lu Fei and didn't take it seriously. Bastard. Qin Guang, you bastard who only cares about the opposite sex. Liuli's angry roar sounded in his heart. Qin Guang was at a loss. He didn't know what was going on. Did Liuli take the wrong medicine today? This wasn't the first time the old man did something bad. Why was she reacting so strongly? You idiot. When you stepped back, you kicked the Holy Grail into the sewage pool. Are you trying to suffocate me to death? Can you be any worse? Quickly jump down and save me. Hearing those words, Qin Guang was instantly shocked. No wonder he felt like he kicked something with his toes. He didn't expect it to be his heavenly Holy Grail. Then he was overjoyed. Retribution. Serves you right for wasting money and tricking me into coming to this broken factory. I should let you taste the smell of sewage. You want me to jump into the sewage pool to save you? Save it? No way. Of course, Qin Guang was not stupid enough to dive into the aerobic pool. No matter how good he was at swimming, he could not stand the smell inside. Besides, he and Lu Fei were still naked at the edge of the pool, so he had to put on his clothes first. Qin Guang, what happened? Lu Fei turned around with great difficulty. She hugged Qin Guang and subconsciously clamped her legs together. Qin Guang waved his hand casually. It's nothing. It's just a small problem. Don't worry about the details. Come, Sister Lu Fei, let me wipe you and then put on your clothes. Are you cold? Lu Fei covered her mouth. I'm not cold at all when I'm beside you. Qin Guang took out a tissue from Lu Fei's bag and bent down to wipe her from behind. He couldn't help but feel proud. Of course she wouldn't feel cold. As far as the eye could see, who else in this world could be like him, extravagantly spreading his inner strength outside his body to resist the cold wind? Small problem? Details? Why don't you tell me again? Hurry up. Why don't you try to dawdle a little longer? Did you eat a bear's heart and a leopard's gall? Hurry up and save me. Don't regret it. While Qin Guang and Lu Fei were putting on their clothes, Liuli's roar did not stop for even a second. Even if one used their toes to think, they could guess how furious she was right now. However, Qin Guang was like a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water. Last time, Liuli blew him up so badly, but she only beat him up. This time he was just taking a dirty bath, so it was nothing. Anyway, I won't be beaten to death. He also felt that Liuli was deliberately taking revenge on him and wanted to drag him into the water. I won't be fooled so easily. I'm not stupid. When we were in Mount Baylor, the Holy Grail flew over by itself. This time you can still fly out by yourself after falling into the sewage pool. At most he could just coax her later. 10 minutes later, he and Lu Fei finally put on their clothes. In his mind, Liuli's rage gradually calmed down. Her roar gradually became weak, and her voice became softer and softer. Qin Guang began to panic. He tried to communicate with Liuli in his mind. Liuli? Liuli-chan. Lord Liuli? What the hell? Don't scare me. However, there was no movement. Qin Guang felt that things were not good. Could it be that he had overplayed with fire and killed someone? Oh no, a god? Impossible, you're a god. How could this little stench make you faint? Qin Guang. Look at what you've done. This time it was Deer Cry's roar again. I didn't do anything. What's going on? Can't Liuli make the cup fly by itself? Qin Guang simply could not understand. Deer Cry shouted in exasperation. Of course it's not a problem normally, but Sister Liuli has consumed too much of her divine power recently. At most she can make the cup shake a little. It's impossible for her to make the Holy Grail fly out directly. She hasn't done anything recently, has she? Do you think everyone is as heartless as you? Recently, Sister Liuli has not stopped using her divine power to deduce. Qin Guang was puzzled. Deduce what? Deduce why the power of the heavenly Holy Grail is leaking. Deduce why the real world is constantly merging with your real world. Deduce how long it will take for the elemental power in your real world to be completely out of control. Deduce what kind of situation is this. Deduce how your real world will be changed if the current situation continues to develop. Qin Guang was speechless. He realized that he had blamed Liuli wrongly. Although Liuli always liked to say things like, "Good luck, I don't know, and we'll cross the bridge when we get to it," but seeing that he was so anxious, she had actually done a lot of things in secret. "Sister Liuli and I are so unlucky to meet you. We must have taken the wrong medicine to accompany you in your madness. Your unlucky cup is really not reliable at all." Dear Cry continued to complain. "I'm sorry, I was wrong." Qin Guang was ashamed by Dear Cry's words. "I'll think of a way now. You'd better hurry. Sister Liuli has already fainted." "Fainted from the stench?" "No, she fainted from anger because of you. But wait a little longer. When the divine power barrier outside her is exhausted, the smell of your foul sewage will drift over. According to what you guys said, after a single molecule drifts into her nose, you might have the chance to feel the most terrifying wrath of God so far. You don't know, but Sister Liuli is actually a germaphobe. It's very serious, so serious that it's almost perverted." Qin Guang suddenly understood. No wonder Liuli would be so furious and out of control after the cup fell into the water. So there was such a thing. He had seen what a germaphobe was like on television. He didn't want to experience what a god with a germaphobe was like. "Is there a situation? Did your phone fall in just now? I'll just buy another one later." Lu Fei, who had tidied up her clothes and was still feeling a little weak, asked subconsciously when she saw Qin Guang staring at the water. Qin Guang shook his head. "It's not a phone." "Then what is it?" "My cup. You'll remember it." Lu Fei remembered. Back in Utopia, Qin Guang had asked her and Xan Qin to put the cup on the communication base station to open up a channel to another world. That cup must be very important. "Oh my god, what should we do now?" Qin Guang had a bitter expression. "Now that things have come to this, I can only jump in and fish it out." It doesn't stink?" Lu Fei subconsciously wanted to hide to the side. "Of course it stinks, but I can't do anything about it. The problem is very serious and the situation is very serious." A minute later he stood by the pool and posed for a long time, but he didn't have the courage to take a leap of faith. "This concubine can't do it." "Can't you control the soil? There's mud in it, right? Why don't you try to wrap the cup in mud?" Lu Fei, who was beside him, saw that he was really shy and suggested. Qin Guang shook his head. "It won't work. I tried it 2 days ago. On one hand, the pollutants in the water are dissolved in the water. On the other hand, even if there is some mud, it's really not much. It's also very scattered, and it's also affected by the flow of water. The elemental power in it is too thin, and it's very difficult to control." As he spoke, he casually raised his hand and tried it. A second later, the holy cup floated to the surface of the water. What's going on?" Looking at this scene, Qin Guang's mind was filled with confusion. Did the old man's earth explosion superpower get stronger again? Why is it so useful? Isn't it very useful? Lu Fei didn't mind that it was dirty. She bent down to take the cup in her hand, shook off the dirty water in it, and then shook it. "This is your precious baby." Only then did Qin Guang react. What the hell? Why was the concentration of the elements in the pool at this moment at least several times higher than usual? It was almost close to the concentration when the wolves in Kainan province mutated a few days ago. The earth explosion superpower could be manipulated with ease, and there was no feeling of sluggishness. It wasn't until he ran to the laboratory to wash the cup clean and put it back into his bag that he finally understood the key point. All along he had neglected a very important thing. The world in the cup, in a sense, was actually the space inside the cup. With the mouth of the heavenly Holy Grail as the dividing line, it seemed to be in the same world, but in fact, the inside and outside of the mouth of the cup were clearly two different worlds. Before the real world and the real world began to merge, the invisible plane barrier on the mouth of the heavenly Holy Grail could seal the power of the Holy Grail very well. Even if there was a slight leakage, it wouldn't have much impact. It could even be understood that there was a layer of one-way filter on the mouth of the cup. When he drank water, only water could pass through, but the power of the Holy Grail was blocked inside the cup. But as the real world was changing bit by bit recently, the passage of the barrier between the planes became stronger, and the power of the Holy Grail leaked out from the Holy Grail even more. This time, when the cup fell directly into the water, it was equivalent to the water from the outside world continuously passing through the mouth of the cup, bringing out more of the power of the Holy Grail from inside. Although this power would quickly disperse to all parts of the world, at least the power of the Holy Grail in the pool would always be more concentrated than in other places. In the past, he had experienced the same phenomenon when he drank water. What he drank seemed to be ordinary tea leaves, but was actually holy water that contained an abundance of the power of the Holy Grail. Unknowingly, it strengthened the special ability of the Lord of the Holy Grail, the Mother Earth explosion, bit by bit. But he was already so used to it that he was numb to it, and often took the initiative to absorb the earth elemental power that leaked out so he didn't notice it. Once he understood this, Qin Guang had a burst of inspiration and was overjoyed. He stomped his feet and turned around to hug Lu Fei, kissing her happily and shouting, "I got it." Beside him, Lu Fei was shocked and touched her stomach. It can't be so fast, right? And although you did Bayubiu just now, the position that you went in was also wrong." As she spoke, she subconsciously clamped her buttocks together. "You can get it like this? This isn't scientific." Qin Guang also knew that he said something wrong and made Lu Fei think the wrong way. He scratched his head in embarrassment. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about my idea to settle the investigation in 2 days. Chapter 1023. That's impossible. You can't do it at all, no one can do it. Even knowing that Qin Guang was a magister, Lu Fei didn't believe what he said. After all, he had just said it himself. Even a grand magister had to follow the basic rules, right? Qin Guang chuckled. No, I just made a new discovery. I won't explain it to you first. You'll naturally understand when you see it. Not caring that it was already past 10, Qin Guang directly took out his phone and called Guoming, asking him to buy medicine first. All kinds of additives, flocculants, and precipitants such as PAC and PM were to be bought as much as possible. Get more lime and some sulfuric acid. Even though Guoming felt it was strange, he still followed Qin Guang's instructions after hanging up, hurriedly contacting suppliers overnight. He remembered the last words that Qin Guang threw down. Our entire sewage treatment station has more than 100,000 cubic meters of water. It's a lot and we need it urgently. Don't be afraid of spending money. Throw money like crazy and get people to transport it back as soon as possible. It's best if it's tomorrow but no later than noon the day after tomorrow. Don't worry about money. Xia Guang has no money now but I still have some savings. Tens of millions or even tens of millions won't be a problem. With Qin Guang's imperial sword in hand, although Guoming didn't know his purpose, after being depressed for more than half a year in the Tongshan industrial factory, he finally experienced the feeling of being a sugar daddy throwing money around. He felt indescribably refreshed, only feeling rich and overbearing. After busying himself for most of the night, he finally finalized the matter at 3 in the morning. Guoming used a calculator to calculate how much money he had spent tonight. Roughly calculating, he had spent more than 1 million. He secretly clicked his tongue, wondering if he had been a little too presumptuous. On the other side, Qin Guang began to stir on the spot. He didn't do anything else. He just made a crane arm and hung the cup in front of the grill of the water inlet. Then he took a water hose from the side, stuffed it into the cup and poured water into the grill, letting the water overflow from the cup into the grill. Lu Fei didn't understand what was going on, and Qin Guang couldn't explain it to her. His plan was very simple. First, he would use this stupid method to increase the concentration of the elemental energy in the entire water body of the wastewater treatment plant. Then, before the inspection team arrived, he would wait for a few hours, leaving enough time for them to react. Then he would throw all the precipitation-forming drugs into the wastewater treatment plant. When the people from the inspection team came to take samples, he would go all out and use his earth burner ability to suppress all the mud to the bottom of the pool. It might not be able to make the water in the entire pool clear and cool, but it would definitely pass the inspection. As for the final problem of discharging the mud, that would have to be done slowly. By doing this, it was a little like trying to deceive everyone and muddle through. However, after listening to Lu Fei's idea, Qin Guang felt that there was nothing wrong with what he did. Passing the inspection first would give the factory a few more months. Later, he could immediately cooperate with the water company of Lu Chemical and immediately start the rectification. It would only be a few days slower than handing it over to the Tiansong Water Company. Even if in the end he felt that he was at a disadvantage after the inspection, as long as Tiansong Song Ningyuan didn't ask for a beating like his pretentious manager Xia, humbly begging him, then he could be merciful and give the factory to them. After fighting for a few months of buffer time and transferring it to Tiansong, it would be more reasonable when extorting compensation. At that time, at least he would be able to hold on to his face, and his heart would feel more comfortable. No matter how he looked at it, passing the inspection team was the most important thing. In fact, the same effect could be achieved by Qin Guang directly selling a favor and asking people to help him falsify the inspection. However, the review team came directly from the central government, so he had to at least sell a favor to Wu Shan. Secretary Ma was a person of high status, and it was very likely that he would have to beg those old men whom he disliked. Compared to selling a favor, he was more willing to spend his own money. A problem that could be solved with money was not a big problem. Of course, in the depths of Qin Guang's heart, what he hoped most was to make a breakthrough in technology. He could carry out the lowest cost transformation on the current basis of Tangshan industrial plant, and then operate it in a dignified manner. In this way he could live up to his conscience, the people of Tangshan City, and his wallet. That was killing two birds with one stone, and he would have a clear conscience. In addition, if he could take this opportunity to force himself to achieve results in technology in the long run, it would also be a great cause to benefit the common people. As Lu Fei said, his every word and action now would lead to too many things. It was better to leave more wealth for the world than to bring disaster to the common people. However, there were only 3 days before the inspection. It was impossible to make a technological breakthrough. If he fought for a few more months, at least he would have another chance to choose. What he lacked the most now was time. Lu Fei and Qin Guang moved their own chairs and sat next to the water inlet. She lazily shrunk her shoulders and leaned against Qin Guang. You're planning to solve the problem by adding medicine, right? This is a bit fake. Qin Guang was embarrassed by her words. Yes, but I don't think it's a big deal. It's not your fault that Tangshan industrial plant didn't meet the standards. It's just your bad luck that you ran into it. It's understandable to fight for the maximum benefits for yourself. Otherwise your money would be wasted. Qin Guang scratched his head. He was actually quite embarrassed. Lu Fei asked again, but how are you going to make the medicine sink? As far as I know, even if it reacted, there would still be a lot of mud. Qin Guang stretched out his right hand, and a small mud ball floated in his palm. With my magic. Didn't you say it didn't work? Aren't we thinking of a way now? Qin Guang pointed to the cup hanging on it. This cup of yours is amazing. Of course, this is my divine artifact. Liuli's faint voice sounded in his heart. Is this how you use the divine artifact? If the people of the endless realm of the gods knew that you used the Holy Grail like this, you would be hunted by the gods for billions of years. You're a disgrace to the gods. Liuli finally woke up. Qin Guang didn't dare to talk back to her. He only laughed in his heart. Hee, Sister Liuli, you're awake? I don't have a choice, do I? Are you okay? You'll know when you come in. Dear customer, when will you come to visit this shop again? Qin Guang asked. What shop? Liuli Fight Club, Bao Shuang Bao Xingtian. Qin Guang silently shook his head like a rattled drum. Even if he had 10 more guts, he wouldn't dare to go in and die. Now that he had been developed by Liuli into a human sandbag that could recover on its own, only God knew how hard she would hit him. After another 2 or 3 hours, Qin Guang saw that Lu Fei was about to fall asleep, so he asked for a short leave from Liuli. He drove Lu Fei to the hotel to sleep. Unfortunately, he didn't have time to be intimate with Lu Fei again. He had to rush back to the factory. He had nothing else to do but sit on the chair and watch the water drip from the cup. It was extremely boring and depressing. Actually, he didn't have to worry about losing the cup. However, Liuli didn't reason with him. She said something like, You left me here alone to do hard labor and let me dry by the side of the sewage pond. You still want to lie comfortably in the hotel room and pick up girls? Are you tired of living? Originally, when he kicked the Holy Grail into the pond, Qin Guang had gotten into trouble. Now that he was faced with Liuli's unreasonable behavior, he could only admit defeat. Although this matter had arisen because of Lori, there was no reason to reason with a woman, let alone a goddess. Fortunately, Lu Fei was considerate and didn't argue with him. From the next morning, trucks drove into the Tangshan Industrial Park sewage treatment plant under the watchful eyes of the public. There were only 2 days before the final trial team arrived. Unknowingly, more and more people were staring at the Tangshan Industrial Park. Qin Guang's purchase of such a large amount of medicine this time had to attract attention. A depressing atmosphere enveloped the entire Tangshan officialdom. Now, basically all the current managers in this place knew who the new boss of Xiaoguang Environmental Protection was. He was a powder keg that no one could afford to offend. Not only was Qin Guang distressed, but the local government of Tangshan was even more distressed than him. If it was just a small figure, a small boss, his money would go down the drain. At most, the local government would express sympathy, regret, and helplessness. Then, they would quietly use the matter as a topic of conversation after a meal. But this time the person who was trapped was Chen Guang. He was not an ordinary person. He was a civil aviation hero, a contemporary internet celebrity, and an old leader of a special ultra-high-end department. He had recently caused a major earthquake in Kainan province's officialdom with a slap. Chen Guang was annoyed by himself, but the people of Tangshan City were not annoyed by him. They were afraid of him. If time could be reversed and they could start over, they would never watch Xiaoguang Environmental Protection get away just like that. Although everyone was very happy at the time and felt that everyone was happy, thanking the mysterious tycoon for solving many of Tangshan City's long-standing problems. Without the money sent by this fool, God knew how many pieces of meat Boss Xia would have to cut to fill the financial hole accumulated by the industrial factory for 8 years. But now, they knew that it was hard to say whether the mysterious tycoon was stupid or not, but he was definitely not someone to be trifled with. But now, even if they caught Boss Xia who had already run away, it would be useless. He had repaid countless loans before, and 170 million yuan had long been scattered to countless places. It was impossible to get the money back. If it wasn't for the fear of getting into trouble again, some of the hidden rich in Tangshan City's local officialdom would have wanted everyone to raise money from their own pockets to send away the god of plague, Chen Guang. They could really come up with so much money, but they didn't dare to. In the small office of the municipal committee, a few people related to this matter, as well as the people in charge of the overall situation, were sitting together and sighing. The scene was very grim. Xiaopeng, you did a good job before. If it were someone else in your situation, they wouldn't have said such words. The middle-aged man sitting in the main seat first praised Deputy Chief Pang. Deputy Chief Pang shook his big belly and sighed. It's considered a fight to the death for me. I gave the emperor a death remonstrance, but now it seems that it's still useless. He arranged for people to buy drugs. Isn't he planning to deceive himself to deal with the investigation the day after tomorrow? Let's not talk about whether he can sink after throwing in so many drugs. Even if he can pass this test, what can he do? Will he add drugs like this every day in the future? Chief Lu, don't you think so? Next to him, Chief Lu, the head of the Environmental Protection Department, also rubbed his brows. This is indeed unrealistic. It costs 1 or 2 million a day. He won't be able to handle it. Expert Ding, do you think there's any other way to persuade him now? The person known as Mr. Ding was a specialist sent by the province. Now that this matter has escalated, it's not enough to understand Chen Guang's emotions. Thus, everyone felt that they had to find another specialist to reason with Chen Guang. How troublesome. Expert Ding thought for a moment. Putting aside the cost, if he simply wants to reach the standard by throwing in drugs, the entire Tangshan industrial plant will be filled with chemical sludge in less than a month. At that time, we can't use conventional methods to discharge the sludge. We can only empty all the ponds. His plan is not advisable. Deputy Chief Pang asked. There are people in Chen Guang's factory who are skilled. He must know about this, right? Expert Ding curled his lips in disdain. So what if he knows? He's clearly being unreasonable. No one can afford to offend him. He has eyes and ears everywhere. I called Old Li and the rest of the review team this morning. Actually, their review team is also under a lot of pressure. The review team is also under pressure? Expert Ding pointed to the ceiling. Yes. The pressure from the sky is especially strong. Is that so? It's quite a headache. So, we have a tough life. Isn't that right? Why is he so stubborn? That's right. It's not easy being a celebrity. Why did he have to get involved in this mess? He's still holding on now. It's embarrassing for everyone. Tangshan City's deputy chief banged the table. All right. Everyone quiet down. We have to think of a way. It's best if someone goes to Tangshan industrial plant to persuade him and tell him that adding drugs is not a long-term solution. Who's going? A sudden silence was the worst. This was the situation in the small office. After waiting for a long time, everyone kept their heads down and acted as if they didn't know anything. Xiaopeng, you're going? Deputy Chief Pang shook his head. No, I don't think so. I was the one who suggested it last time. I'm afraid I'll be hit by a tree if I mention it again. I can't handle such an important task. Then the deputy chief looked at the others. My stomach suddenly feels uncomfortable. I have to go to the hospital. Oh no. The provincial construction department informed me that I have to attend a meeting today. I'll be leaving first. Not long after, everyone in the office scattered like birds and beasts. The deputy chief smiled bitterly. Actually, if he really wanted to suppress the task, someone else would have to take it. But what was the use of that? Chen Guang had even bought the drugs. That meant he had made up his mind. He would not turn back until he hit the wall. He took out his phone dejectedly. Never mind. I'll call the higher-ups and ask for help. These people were not at the level where they could communicate with him on equal terms, but there should be someone who was friends with him. He could get someone to persuade him as a friend, right? Chapter 1024. News of Tangshan factory purchasing large amounts of medicine within a short period of time had similarly reached another person's desk. In the senior director's office of Tiansong Water Company, Song Ningyuan was flipping through a report in boredom. While he had already become one of the main decision-makers in this massive corporation, he actually did not know much about technology. He did not feel that he needed to learn everything either. He was the boss and only needed to manage major decisions and personnel appointments. As for other matters, it was much better to leave them to someone else rather than having to do everything himself. Just like the emperors of ancient times, no matter how concerned they were about the people's livelihood, there was no need for them to learn how to transplant rice. The phone on his desk rang. Picking it up, it was the exceptionally sweet voice of a secretary. Mr. Song, Manager Xiaoyu is back and wants to see you. Song Ningyuan grunted in acknowledgement. All right, let him in. He did not really like being called Manager Song. After entering, Xiaoyu rubbed his hands rather nervously. How is the matter with Xia Guang and Tangshan factory? Have they already started dismantling it? Song Ningyuan looked up at Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu smiled awkwardly. Song? Mr. Song, not yet. What happened? Song Ningyuan was not in a hurry to blame Xiaoyu. He understood the abilities of this capable subordinate of his. If he had not succeeded, something must have happened. Xiaoyu hurriedly explained. After a long time he concluded, that's how it was. I had not thought that the person who bought Xia Guang would be Qin Guang. His attitude was extremely vile at the time, not taking our Tiansong company seriously at all, repeatedly telling me to scram in front of everyone in the meeting room. Old Joe of the construction team was about to flip out. Luckily I managed to hold him back. Song Ningyuan nodded. You did well. You must not make a move against him. But why didn't you report this to me yesterday? Xiaoyu said in a vexed tone. Actually, I was planning on going to MT Tangshan again today to reason with him, but I just heard some news. that Qin Guang had Guoming purchase large amounts of medicine. It looks like he intends to use medicine to bluff his way through this time. So I thought that it would be useless to go look for him in my capacity, and so I hurried back. Mr. Song, this. Song Ningyuan rubbed his eyebrows. Take a break first. I'll think about this. After Xiaoyu walked out, Song Ningyuan burst into laughter. He was not anxious at all. Instead, he felt indescribably pleased. After such a long time, he had heard a lot about Qin Guang. No matter how stupid he was, he knew that Tang Ying had only used Qin Guang as a shield. He knew that Qin Guang and Tang Ying didn't have that kind of relationship. However, things had changed. Although he had lost a little face because of what happened back then, he had already changed his target and no longer cared about Tang Ying. Moreover, Qin Guang's status had risen too quickly. Even if Song Ningyuan bore a grudge against him, he would not take the initiative to provoke him again. However, he had never imagined that he would have to deal with Qin Guang again. Song Ningyuan had personally negotiated the deal for the Tangshan industrial factory, so he was determined to get it. Although he knew that the lucky boss Xia had found a scapegoat, he didn't think much of it. Everything was done according to the rules. If the factory didn't meet the standards in 8 years, even the gods couldn't save it. Now he suddenly realized that the scapegoat was actually an old acquaintance. Although Qin Guang wasn't the same as before, Song Ningyuan didn't think that Qin Guang's struggles could cause any trouble for him. Are you kidding me? Do you think environmental protection is like running a house? You think you can pass the test by adding drugs? Do you think I don't know how to find someone else? Do you dare to add drugs in front of the review team? I'll secretly take a photo of you and expose it to the internet. No matter how good you are, you'll have to admit it. It's really like wearing out iron shoes and fruitless searching, only to find it by chance. I was just wondering how I could teach you a lesson, and now you've run into my trap. Don't blame me for making fun of you. I might not be able to do anything to you in other fields, but environmental protection? I'm sorry, but that's my home field. Song Ningyuan called Xiaoyu in first. Try to see if you can bribe 2 employees in the Tangshan industrial factory. It's best if you can take a photo or video of them administering the drugs. Xiaoyu immediately shook his head. I'm afraid that'll be difficult. I heard that Qin Guang is guarding the factory 24/7. Also, he has chased out the employees who didn't get along with him. There's too little time and it's hard to find someone reliable to interact with. Song Ningyuan waved his hand. Do you have any other ideas? He won't be able to pass even if he adds drugs. Xiaoyu rolled his eyes. Mr. Song, we have our own people in the review team. We can get them to extend the sampling time to a week, and then take samples at random locations and times throughout the factory. Even if Chen Guang adds drugs, he can't possibly control it for a week, right? There's bound to be a loophole, right? Also, if we let others take photos, Chen Guang might find fault with us, but the review team can brazenly patrol and take photos. If he dares to stop us, we'll promote it online. Song Ningyuan snapped his fingers. Let's do that. Meanwhile, Chen Guang had been sitting in the factory for an entire day. In order to make it comfortable for him, Guoming had even ordered someone to move his office chair to the water intake and set up a table for Chen Guang so that he could put his laptop on it. Old Master Guang was sitting on pins and needles, but Liuli wouldn't let him leave, so he couldn't leave either. Fortunately, his skills were so strong that he wouldn't catch a cold even if he was exposed to the cold wind for an entire day. Everything else was fine except that he felt a little silly sitting in the open all by himself. However, he couldn't explain his intentions to others. Fortunately, Guoming helped him smooth things over by putting up banners all over the factory. Work hard for 3 days, live and die with Tongshan Industrial Factory. Fill in the gaps and leave no regrets. Do a good job of every detail. Live and die as a member of Tongshan Industrial Factory. This time, the remaining 30 or so employees in the factory understood that the boss was sitting at the water intake to show his determination and boost morale. He wanted everyone to move and think of every way possible to save the factory. More than a day passed. Even though there were constantly large trucks hauling medicine into Tongshan Industrial Factory, the 30 or so employees were working hard. The medicine that had been hauled in was like a mountain, and they were all placed in predetermined positions according to Guoming's instructions. Even the boss wasn't afraid of the cold or fatigue. He personally sat there to monitor the data, so how could the employees be lazy? Chen Guang put his hands in his pockets and stared listlessly at the novel on the computer screen. He then looked at the employees running up and down in the distance, working hard. If Liuli hadn't stopped him from moving, he would have helped carry the bags. The situation was really awkward. When the sky was about to turn dark, he received an unexpected call. It was from Old Master Jean. He didn't expect that such a small matter would reach the ears of the old masters. The old master had specially called to persuade him to let go. Not only that, the old master even promised that he would think of a way to compensate him in other ways. He guaranteed that he wouldn't suffer a loss of 170 million yuan. However, Chen Guang was already in a difficult position. He had encouraged the other people in the factory and had already been sitting here for an entire day. He didn't want Song Ningyuan to take advantage of him for nothing, so how could he let it go just like that? This was no longer a matter of money. This was a matter of thinking. This was a matter of face. Face was more important than the heavens. I'm taking this matter so seriously. If I give up without achieving some results, wouldn't it be a huge stain on my perfect life? Therefore, no matter how Old Master Jean tempted him, he wouldn't waver. Later on, Old Master Jean talked about the righteousness of the millions of people in Tongshan City. Chen Guang also gave him a promise. Although he seemed to be stubborn and wanted to cause trouble, he actually had confidence and plans. He promised that the people wouldn't suffer a loss. At most, he would cooperate with the water company of the Lu Chemical Company to increase investment and rebuild the Tongshan Industrial Factory. I definitely won't do worse than Tiansong. I'll also return this place to a great place within half a year. Old Master Jean saw that he couldn't persuade him, so he couldn't do anything about it. The old man decided to call the leader of the review team to reassure him. This was what the old master said. Don't give Chen Guang face. Just investigate to the death. The stricter the better, but don't be unreasonable with Chen Guang. You have to reason with him about everything. You have to use the righteousness of the environmentalists. Don't let him feel that you are deliberately making things difficult for him. Instead, let him feel that as environmentalists, you are being strict because of your responsibility and responsibility. Didn't he add medicine? Even if you let him add medicine, he won't be able to pass the test. Let him and his Xia Guang environmental protection die quickly. Don't let him get involved in this matter again. If he flips out and gets angry, it doesn't matter. Bring me out, bring Wu Shan out, and I'll personally take care of it. This kid is very favored here, but we don't nurture princelings. What we nurture are the pillars of our society. This isn't his specialty. The sooner you make him give up, the sooner I can pull him back to the right path. After a long time, before Chen Guang had time to use his relationship with Zenith Star had already started to undermine him. Actually, Old Master Jean couldn't be blamed. He was also kind. He didn't want him to waste time and energy in Tongshan City, and even promised to compensate him. The old master felt that he was a child throwing a tantrum and messing around. Qin Guang's treatment was unique in the world. Time flew. After Qin Guang sat at the water intake of the Tongshan Industrial Factory with amazing perseverance for 2 days and 2 nights, the Central Review team was finally about to arrive. Last night, Qin Guang had already ordered the entire Tongshan Industrial Factory to put all kinds of drugs and additives into the pool 1 night in advance according to the sewage treatment process. The final trial of the sewage treatment plant in Tongshan Industrial Park was about to begin. A long motorcade drove in from the gate of the factory. Under the cheering of Old Master Jean, the review team was particularly motivated. They even temporarily expanded the team. There were 3 minibuses and 1 bus. The minibus was loaded with people, and the minibus was loaded with equipment. The review team only had one purpose: to continuously take random samples to ensure that Qin Guang didn't have any loopholes. They wanted to kill him. Chapter 1025. When the motorcade entered the gate, Guoming, Hualing, and Zhongyu were standing next to Qin Guang. Lu Fei was looking around the pond and clicking her tongue from time to time. The medicine was put in last night, and the reaction was almost complete by now. Before the sun rose, Hualing and Zhongyu tested the main indicators such as CODCR, total phosphorus, and ammonia nitrogen. The concentration of soluble pollutants in these water bodies had dropped to a level that met the requirements. In addition, during the whole process of adding the drug, the amount of drug in each section was accurate to the gram. In the end, the test results of the various sections were perfect. Basically, they were very close to the original design parameters. Of course, this was the ideal conditions that disregarded the super difficult to deal with components, and the biggest technical difficulty of classification and pretreatment. For example, the chemical oxygen demand in the anaerobic pond, which was the concentration of CODCR, was 6,000 mg per liter. After the drug was added to the second anaerobic pond, the concentration of the effluent directly dropped to 1,500 mg per liter. The COD removal rate of the UASB anaerobic process reached 75%, which was just reasonable. The subsequent 2-stage aerobic process was also strictly according to this ratio, and finally the effluent concentration was controlled at around 400 mg per liter, and the removal rate of the 2-stage aerobic process was maintained at around 50%. The large capacity of the effluent stabilization pond was also put in drugs to ensure that the COD concentration in the entire pond was around 400 mg per liter, and it was seamlessly connected with the effluent of the previous process. In the entire wastewater treatment plant, each function group was strictly advancing according to this pollutant removal rate ladder. Even if it was a fraud, it was still a very high-end fraud. Without very professional calculations and accurate tests, it couldn't even be faked. With the technical ability of the previous staff of the Tongshan plant, it was impossible. Fortunately, there were 2 top students from Gokyo University, Hualing and Zhongyu. The 2 of them followed Zhuojingxi to conduct photocatalysis-related research in the school's laboratory. In the past, the 2 of them had to do precise research to at least 4 decimal places. With Professor Xu escorting them, the equipment they brought here was almost all good goods directly from the National Photocatalyst Laboratory of Gokyo University. Even the pipette guns they used were imported. They were many times better than ordinary local laboratories. They were even better than the ones brought by the Central Review team. It was because of Hualing and Zhongyu's continuous and precise tests that they were able to understand the situation of the pollutants in the major functional groups like the back of their hands. Similarly, Hualing and Zhongyu had also put in a lot of effort in the calculation of the dosage. This was also a very meticulous and complicated work. Qin Guang could do it himself, but he was lazy. He was also very bad at doing experiments. No matter how much of a genius he was, he couldn't know everything that he hadn't learned. Of course, Guoming couldn't relax at all, and Hualing and Zhongyu were also full of melancholy. The reason was very simple. Although the soluble pollutants could meet the standard, the floating mud floating on the water surface like a floating island was too eye-catching. This was especially so during the 2-stage aerobic treatment process. As the aerator below continued to aerate, the bubbles in the pool rose up along with the mud. It looked like moldy congee with century eggs and lean meat that was boiling. Although it was not uncommon to force the standard by using drugs to meet the standard in China, it couldn't be a pool full of floating mud, right? With this kind of operation there was no need to test it. They could just take a picture and post it on the internet on the spot. It would be dead in minutes. It was said that one was deceiving oneself while stealing a bell, but one couldn't poke the eyes of others. Guoming looked at Qin Guang awkwardly, then looked back at the pool in front of him. Sigh, there's too much mud. It's impossible to fish it all out. There's too much mud in the entire factory. Hua Ling wanted to laugh but she couldn't. She patted on Qin Guang's shoulder and continued, Look, I told you yesterday that it's useless to add medicine, and you insisted on me calculating it. You've really tired me and Zhongyu. Zhongyu also frowned. In the past, Hua Ling and I also represented the school to help the provincial department do a similar investigation. When the time comes, they will definitely take photos and video evidence, then use a large number of tubes to take samples of the mud and water in the pool. It won't pass. Guoming said again, That's right. When the time comes, we might be criticized by the whole country again. Although Tangshan factory has been criticized at least 20 to 30 times, Boss Xia used to be the scapegoat. Now it's you, Qin Guang. Lu Fei ran down the stairs with her hands clasped. Unlike the others who were sighing, she looked at Qin Guang excitedly and urged, Hurry up, hurry up. Qin Guang, who had been sitting on the chair with his eyes closed, finally opened his eyes. He stood up and smiled at Guoming and the others. Don't panic. Everyone don't panic. How can we not panic? They will be here in a minute. Guoming was so anxious that he jumped up and down. Hua Ling and Zhongyu were confused by his inexplicable calmness. They felt that something was wrong. They looked at Lu Fei, who was eager to try, and they were even more confused. Hua Ling quietly moved next to Lu Fei. Sister Fei, does Qin Guang still have some trump card? Zhongyu also pricked up her ears. She wanted to hear a legend. Lu Fei laughed. I can't say, but I can promise you that you will soon witness a miracle. At this moment, an employee ran over from afar. Chief Qin. Manager Gua. They're here. The inspection team's convoy has entered our factory. Guoming was shocked. His dark skin instantly turned pale. We're doomed. Qin Guang suddenly waved his hand. Hey everyone, get ready. It's time to witness a miracle. At the same time, Guoming wanted to go to the entrance to receive Qin Guang. At the same time, he wanted to know what Qin Guang was trying to do. If Qin Guang wasn't the boss, he would have slapped him in the face by now. While Guoming was still in a daze, Lu Fei had already run to the anaerobic pool and clapped her hands excitedly. It's going down. It's going down. Awesome. What? Hua Ling was still standing next to Qin Guang. She asked from afar. Lu Fei waved her hand. You will understand when you see it. Qin Guang stood there with a smile. He looked like an expert. Seeing that Qin Guang wasn't going to explain himself, Guoming immediately ran towards the anaerobic pool. Hua Ling and Zhongyu also glared at Qin Guang before they ran towards Lu Fei. When the three of them finally reached the pool, they realized something was wrong. The sludge floating on the surface of the anaerobic pool, which looked like a bird's eye view of the Thousand Island Lake, was long gone. There is another piece. It's sinking. Zhongyu pointed to the corner of the square pool. What's going on? Guoming had been working at Tangshan factory for half a year, but he had never seen anything like this. There was no special reason for the floating mud to sink. Hua Ling shook her head. I don't know. Lu Fei shouted at the side of the anaerobic pool. She turned around and waved at everyone. Come over here. We can still see something. The three of them ran towards the oxygenation pool again, just in time to catch up with the last batch of sludge that was sinking. The sludge that was bubbling up like boiling porridge had now all gathered together and turned into blocks of rock that were sinking at an extremely fast speed. The people standing by the pool could even hear the thumping sounds coming from the bottom of the pool. It sounded like someone was throwing bricks into it. After a few seconds, the anaerobic pool, which had been boiling due to the aeration, gradually became much brighter. The few of them continued to look down the section. The water in the sedimentation pool was also brightly lit, and the stabilizing pond at the end was as green and translucent as a river. The mud was all gone. Guoming didn't understand what was happening. It was completely different from the popular science education he had been exposed to. But he didn't have time to ask Qin Guang for an answer. He quickly excused himself and went straight to the office building. Hua Ling and Zhongyu returned to Qin Guang's side. Why is this happening? The mud inexplicably congealed together and sank down like bricks. Hua Ling waved her hands and said. Zhongyu also stared at Qin Guang with wide eyes. Qin Guang crossed his legs and sat back on the swivel chair. You don't understand. This is God's will. God's will? Hua Ling and Zhongyu were both confused. Qin Guang nodded heavily. Yes, this is God's will. It's God's guidance. In fact, I've already expected this. According to my precise calculations, after 8 hours of reaction, The drug we put in will produce a chelate structure that you can't understand with your knowledge. I've calculated with my fingers, and now it's time for these flocculation structures to be fully unleashed. So, Hualing felt that he was talking nonsense. Qin Guang grinned again. It's like a spring. You keep stretching the spring, and when you loosen your hand, it will retract with a hum. When the van der Waals force between the molecules, the molecular chain force, or any other kind of stress exceeds the limit, it will be instantly released. This will cause the originally scattered mud to be instantly absorbed, forming an insoluble precipitate, and then hardening at the bottom of the pool. It's fake. Zhong, you still didn't believe it. Qin Guang spread his hands. Is your guess more real, or is it the truth with your own eyes? Hualing asked, then how do you know this will happen? Have you forgotten who I am? Who? I'm an almighty Superman. You don't know the terrifying computing power in my brain. It's also because I don't want to compete for the Nobel Prize. Otherwise, it will be me every year and the Nobel Prize will be renamed to Qin Guang Prize. Anyway, everything is under my control. Okay, you guys go rest and wait for my good news. Qin Guang closed his eyes again. He had an expression that said, summer insects can't talk about ice. This time Hualing and Zhong Yu had to believe it even if they didn't want to. Although it was unbelievable, as Qin Guang said, seeing is believing. In the wonderful world of chemistry, this was actually not impossible. For example, adding the right amount of sodium hydroxide to the copper sulfate solution could instantly form a flocculent precipitate, and the indigo solution would instantly become colorless. The two girls, whose minds were full of question marks, used this phenomenon to convince themselves as they returned to the factory dormitory. Perhaps the reaction process in the sewage pool was particularly complicated and had exceeded their understanding, but Qin Guang's explanation was always correct. You can't compare people to each other. Hualing sighed. Zhong Yu also nodded. It's just that his brain is so powerful. It's a pity that he didn't come to work with us on photocatalysis. If he had a breakthrough, Teacher Zhua and Teacher Xu would be smiling even if they fell asleep, right? He's a genius. The thinking of a genius is always something we can't understand. Lu Fei sat next to Qin Guang and patted his shoulder. Shameless. You obviously used magic to cheat and you still have the face to talk about the Nobel Prize. Why don't you go to heaven? Qin Guang coughed. Sister Lu Fei, don't touch me. Don't look at how relaxed I look right now. I'm just pretending. More than 100,000 cubic meters of sewage is really not a joke. The resulting sludge is hundreds of tons. I even used up my Earth Elemental MP. MP? It's mana. You don't know how much mana it burns. I didn't even use any endurance equipment. Do you need me to give you a mana buff? Sure. Bring me a big mana potion while you're at it. Okay. I have to meditate to recover my mana. Help me keep an eye on me. Don't let anyone disturb me. Qin Guang really didn't talk nonsense with Lu Fei. At this moment, his earth burner ability completely covered the entire sewage treatment plant. At the same time, it solidified the sludge in more than 100,000 cubic meters of sewage to the bottom of the pool. This consumed his elemental ability very quickly. Moreover, this was not an instantaneous release. It required continuous support from the ability. He was fighting against the diffusion of nanoscale molecules. The difficulty was not enough to explain to others. On the other side, Guoming rushed back to the office building in time to meet with the experts and leaders of the review team. The boss, Qin Guang, did not personally welcome the review team. This made the people in the review team feel uneasy, but they did not say anything. Although everyone now knew that he was the boss of Xiaoguang Environmental Protection and the person behind the scenes of Tongshan Industrial Sewage Treatment Plant, Guoming was currently the general manager of Xiaoguang Environmental Protection on the surface. He had full authorization from Qin Guang and could represent him in all matters within Xiaoguang Environmental Protection. Just like when others came to Microsoft to discuss business, it was already the highest level of courtesy for Microsoft to send their CEO. There was no reason to let founder Bill Gates do all the work. However, everyone knew that Qin Guang, who wanted to review Tongshan Industrial Sewage Treatment Plant, was a topic that couldn't be avoided. After the review team leader, Expert Li, got out of the car and instructed others to arrange the equipment and instruments. He went straight to the conference room accompanied by Guoming. On the way, Expert Li asked tentatively, "Is Mr. Qin in the plant today?" Guoming did not intend to hide it from him. Soon this group of people would meet Qin Guang at the water inlet. He pretended to be very distressed. Mr. Qin is at the water inlet. He has been sitting there for 2 days and 2 nights. He refused to come down no matter what we said. We couldn't persuade him. Chapter 1026. Expertly was stunned. Qin Guang's attitude was so firm. You are a billionaire boss sitting in the open air of your own factory. Don't you think it stinks? Aren't you clearly telling everyone that you want to live and die with Tongshan Factory? If it weren't for old Master Jin's phone call and instructions, Expertly almost wanted to turn around and leave. When the gods fight, the mortals suffer. Although he was regarded as a big shot in the domestic environmental science field, much higher than Su Lijing in the economics field, and had many friends in the political and academic circles, he was still unwilling to confront the real privileged class. Fortunately, Su Tao had heard that Qin Guang was an upright person. Although Qin Guang was rude and unreasonable, he was still a reasonable person. In any case, Su Tao might be here to grab hold of Qin Guang's weakness, but as long as he followed Old Man Jin's instructions and communicated with Qin Guang as a senior in the academic world, Qin Guang wouldn't act recklessly. If he had known this would happen, he would have kidnapped Dean Han of his school, Jinhuan College. They were all his family, so it would be easier to talk. Thinking of the encounter with Dean Han of Gokyo University last night, Comrade Li was also angry. Back then, you were my disciple after all, yet you shamelessly talked about all sorts of things and refused to show up even if you were beaten to death. You wanted to torture your teacher, me, to make me suffer. However, Dean Han also gave Comrade Li a reassuring injection. That was, although Qin Guang was young and stubborn, he still respected the elderly, especially the older generation who were knowledgeable and virtuous. Teacher Li, I didn't mean to give up. It's just that I just took over the Jinhuan College and can't leave. How about this? If we really make trouble, I will immediately rush down from Wujing, okay? I will arrive in 2 hours at most. At that time, I will bring Qin Guang to apologize to you. You are my teacher, he will definitely give you face. Dean Han patted his chest and promised. Before the on-site inspection and sampling, the review team and the existing employees of Tongshan Industrial Factory led by Guoming naturally had a meeting. At the meeting, the two sides showed their cards and publicly exchanged the conclusions drawn from the previous inspections. The purpose and significance of this review was not to deliberately make things difficult for anyone, but to solve the long-standing problem of Tongshan Industrial Factory not meeting the standards. If they continued to fail to meet the standards, the business qualification of Xiaoguang Environmental Protection would be revoked. Rome wasn't built in a day and no one was targeting anyone else. Xiaoguang Environmental Protection and Tongshan Industrial Factory had walked step by step to where they were today. Everyone was sad and regretful, but there was nothing they could do. Environmental protection had never been a profit-oriented thing. They must have a sense of social responsibility and shoulder the burden. If the operation did not meet the standards and caused harm to Tongshan City, they should be punished. On the contrary, if you do well, policy subsidies and local rewards will certainly not be lacking. Meritorious service would be rewarded and mistakes would be punished. This was the main theme of environmental protection policies in recent years, and no one was an exception. All right, the 43rd Compliance Review of the Tongshan Industrial Park Sewage Treatment Plant operated by Xiaoguang Environmental Protection Company, Limited has officially begun. Samples will be taken at random times and sections. The theoretical pollutant removal rate of each section will be calculated reasonably. The review process will follow the 3 principles of fairness, impartiality and openness. All employees of Tongshan Industrial Factory, please fully cooperate with the review in the next 7 days. With a wave of Expert Li's hand, the members of the review team in the conference room stood up and announced the official start of the review. Guoming was stunned at first, then his face changed slightly. Expert Li, didn't the previous review only last 2 days? This is... Comrade Li smiled honestly and patted Guoming on the shoulder. Manager Gua, it's like this. If your factory can meet the standards, there's no difference between 2 days and 7 days. After all, Xiaoguang Environmental Protection's operating rights are only 4 months. If they can't pass the review this time, it's equivalent to the golden ball overtime in a football game, suddenly dying. Extending to 7 days is also out of a responsible attitude for your company. Manager Gua, please cooperate. Guoming's mouth twitched and he was already cursing in his heart. Uncle Ball wants you to be responsible. Can't you leave after 1 day of sampling? Guoming's heart was filled with unspeakable worry. Although the sludge in the pond inexplicably sank before coming, making the entire sewage treatment station's current operating state look perfect. But he also knew that adding medicine, after all, would not solve the root cause. After a long time, the sunken sludge would sooner or later rise again. There was still a steady stream of wastewater from other factories in the industrial park, which would cause the concentration of pollutants in the entire pond to continue to rise. especially the heavy metal ions, although by adding sulfuric acid and then a comprehensive reaction, most of the heavy metal ions became precipitates, but after a long time, they would still follow the process to the subsequent stages. But even if he was cursing in his heart, he couldn't show any difference on his face. He could only laugh and say that he would cooperate with the work of the expert leaders. The review team headed by Expert Li, with dozens of people up and down, immediately set off with a variety of instruments to various parts of the Tangshan industrial plant. Except for Hualing and Zhong Yu's laboratory with the sign Gokyo University Photocatalyst Tangshan Industrial Plant Laboratory, all the other laboratories were also seized by the technicians who came with the review team. The background of these technicians was also not small. They were led by a senior laboratory member of the ministry's review team, and they were composed of capable personnel from the Dachuan Provincial Department and the prefectural environmental monitoring stations. Comrade Old Li, with his hands behind his back, followed by a dense group of people, went straight to the pond. Before sampling and testing, on-site visits were the first step of the work. Old Li used a reverse process visit method. In short, it was to push from the water outlet all the way to the water inlet. Manager Gua, your water is a bit clear. Comrade Old Li stood at the water outlet with a confused face, thinking that his eyes were playing tricks on him. Although he already knew that Qin Guang had ordered Tangshan Industrial Plant to pour drugs crazily before he came here, he couldn't point out the other party's real evidence. He was in a particularly awkward situation. He knew that the other party had poured drugs, but because of Qin Guang he couldn't say it. He could only think of ways to catch him from other places. Because Qin Guang was the one who gave the order to pour the drugs, no matter how nice old Master Jin's words were, he couldn't slap Qin Guang in the face. This was self-evident. However, he didn't take Qin Guang's matter seriously. He had dealt with such factories, if not 1,000, at least 800. No matter how good the drug was, the mud in the pond couldn't run away. I'll take photos and videos at the scene for evidence, and then drag you along to take samples. When the evidence is conclusive, I'm not afraid of you denying it. But even if you beat him to death, he would never have thought that the scene would be like this. I'm really seeing a ghost. I know that you guys pour drugs, but why is your water so clear? Guoming's surprise was no better than Comrade Old Li's. He had just seen the water outlet about 20 minutes ago. At that time, because there was too much floating mud in the stabilization pond of the previous section, the discharged water from the water outlet looked no different from the color of instant coffee. It was miserable. But now, if he didn't know that this was a sewage outlet, he would have taken a cup and scooped up a spoonful to taste it. On the other side, the employees of the Tangshan factory who accompanied them were afraid of causing a commotion. These employees blinked their eyes, wondering if they were still dreaming, or if they had lived so many years in vain. Is this still the Tangshan Industrial Factory where I have worked for 8 years? Why does this water look so sci-fi? Suddenly, Comrade Old Li asked. Fortunately, before coming here, Guoming had already learned a little bit from Qin Guang. He could only bite the bullet and proudly said, "Of course, that's for sure." After 3 months of process improvement and operation debugging, the operation of our factory is now very stable. Manager Gua, you guys, could it be that you secretly sent the wastewater underground and connected a water pipe to the outlet? The scene in front of him was too strange. Comrade Old Li couldn't help but ask this rebellious question, even if he offended Qin Guang. Guoming immediately jumped up and said, "Expert Li, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. The water situation of our factory can be checked. We can't fake things like using clean water to replace sewage water. Or you can install a flow meter here and another flow meter at the water inlet. You can check our water balance. I'll drink 1 drop more and I'll take a drop less." Seeing that Guoming was so resolute, Expert Li quickly tried to smooth things over. "Manager Gua, I'm just joking. Don't take it seriously." He thought to himself, what the hell? You guys don't do clean water to sewage water, but you guys can't do it either. But the problem is, where is your medicine? Where is the precipitation? The law of conservation of matter? The lid of Lavoisier's coffin can't be closed anymore. With this doubt in mind, Expert Li and the experts of the review team walked from the water outlet to the water inlet. Along the way, many experts almost began to doubt their lives. They knew that they must have put in the medicine, but there was no precipitation at all. This magic was even more ridiculous than turning a living person into a living person. Finally, everyone saw Qin Guang, who was still sitting there in a meditative state. Expert Li wanted to go up and say hello to Qin Guang, but Lu Fei's eyes drifted away. The 2 burly security guards she brought with her blocked the way. "This is Professor Li from the University of Science and Technology of China?" Lu Fei greeted him with a smile. Expert Li was stunned. He felt that this beautiful girl in a leather jacket looked familiar, but he couldn't remember her name. Lu Fei took out a business card from her pocket and handed it to Expert Li. Professor Li, you're forgetful. I'm Lu Fei, the daughter of Lu Jiachuan from Lu Chemical. A few years ago, when my father had a meal with Professor Li, I had the honor of sitting at the same table and greeting the elders. Old Li's expression brightened. Little Lu's daughter, no wonder you look familiar. The only daughter of Lu Jiachuan, the chairman of Lu Chemical, was not a small figure in the country. But it was a little strange. Why would she appear at Tongshan factory at this time? Old Li's eyes still drifted to Qin Guang's direction. That's Qin Guang, right? Lu Fei gestured for him to keep quiet. It's him. But Professor Li, to tell you the truth, I'm a friend of Qin Guang's. That brat has a strange temperament and he just has to be stubborn. He's been sitting here for 2 days and 2 nights, and no one can persuade him to leave. He says that he's here to pray for the Tongshan factory, and that no one is to disturb him. But he's just a decoration. Professor Li, ignore him. Interrogate him however you want and follow the rules. Don't worry. Although he has a violent temper, he's actually reasonable. I'll watch over him and promise not to cause trouble for your investigation, okay? Qin Guang was acting strangely and Lu Fei was here to stop him. Expert Li and the others couldn't figure out what Qin Guang was up to, but they couldn't easily offend him. Therefore, everyone tacitly ignored him, who had inexplicably moved a chair to sit in the open, and continued to visit other places on the spot. Anyway, Qin Guang was sitting there and he couldn't suck the pollutants into his stomach. They could just treat him as a decoration in the sewage treatment plant, and it wouldn't affect the investigation. But when Old Li turned around, he kept cursing in his heart. I wish you a heavy rain tonight. When they were far away, Lu Fei returned to Qin Guang's side with a stiff expression. What's wrong? Qin Guang looked up slightly. What's going on? Lu Fei smiled bitterly. Your manager Gu just whispered something to me. What is it? Lu Fei sighed. The investigation will last for a week, random time, random location, random sampling. Hearing those words, Qin Guang nearly vomited blood. What a scam. He had been here for less than an hour. Even if he had been desperately searching for the Earth element power in the outside world, the Earth explosion's elemental power reserve was still in short supply, and he had consumed about 30% to 40% of it. According to his original calculation, if he saved some money and had a stronger endurance, it shouldn't be a problem for him to last 2 days. But it was certainly not easy. He had never continuously consumed his supernatural ability for such a long time. It could be said to be a double torture to his body and spirit. It was like a never-tired machine. After running for a long time, it always had to be stopped for maintenance and lubrication. Qin Guang was a little tired now, but he felt that with his willpower and the strongest body in history, he wouldn't be exhausted for another 48 hours. But now the investigation suddenly changed to 7 days, which was obviously bad news. Qin Guang silently looked up at the sky, thinking to himself, in the end, it's the sun who was stupid enough to mess with me. Somewhere, Jin Shiyue's father, who was reading documents, suddenly moved his butt. Strange, he felt a little constipated. Before he knew it, a day had passed. The inspection team settled down in the factory. Sampling, testing, photographing, videotaping, visiting, checking, none of these procedures were left behind. In order to ensure the principle of fairness and impartiality, he even borrowed a law enforcement recorder to follow every step of his. He was determined not to leave any traces. Everything looked so calm and normal. The investigation this time was no different from many in the past. But there was something different because everyone who passed by Qin Guang, whether it was the investigation team or the employees of the Tongshan factory, felt very strange. Just how good was the feng shui of this pit? This master had been sitting here for 3 days and 2 nights. The employees of the Tongshan factory thought, could this be the dragon's lair in our blessed land? Chief Qin personally suppressed the dragon's vein? So all the mud has sunk? Amazing. Chapter 1027. The first day passed, and the 24-hour monitoring data was placed in front of the leaders of the review team. Of course, there were no problems with the data. It was as perfect as a textbook. The employees of the Tongshan Industrial Factory were also exceptionally enthusiastic. Although they did not know what happened, perhaps the dragon among men, Xiao Qin, had really stabilized the factory's luck. In short, the first day passed without any mishap. Even if everyone knew that they had indeed added drugs from the situation in the pool, they felt that they might have added fake drugs. How could the operation of the factory be so perfect? The scariest scam in the world was that even the people who had personally added the drugs into the pool began to doubt their memory. The abnormal situation at the Tangshan industrial factory had also spread to the ears of many people who were paying attention to this matter. As a core member of the Central Think Tank's advisory group, Old Lee, who was having a headache, even called Old Master Jean again. Old Master Jean picked up the phone and thought that there was a conflict between Old Lee and Qin Guang, so he started to comfort him. Professor Lee, did you catch that kid's weakness? Was he going to make a scene? It's okay, just investigate it. I'll call him right away. No, it's not like that. Leader, things are a little different from what we expected. Old Lee felt that he had betrayed his leader's trust and was extremely embarrassed. What's wrong? The operation of the factory is so perfect that I can't believe it. I can't find any evidence at all. It can't be, right? Leader, it's really like this. I've tried my best. I don't know what to do now. I feel like I've learned all these years of environmental protection for nothing. He knew that he had added drugs, but he didn't show any signs on the surface. He didn't know what kind of new additives he had used to make the sludge and sediment completely sink to the bottom of the pool, and even the aeration couldn't come up. If it's as I guessed, the additive formula they used is enough to go down in history. Leader, you know that I can't mention it. Old Master Jean did not know much about technology, but he knew that it was definitely very powerful. Is there any other way? Perhaps we can only think of a way to dig out some mud from the bottom of the pool and do a public elemental half-life test. Then, we can get the authoritative organization to verify the time of formation of the mud and then determine that they used illegal drugs to get away with it. Has this been used in the regular examinations before? Not really. Old Man Jean rejected Specialist Lee's idea. Forget it then. Qin Guang will explode. Let's just follow the rules. On the other side, Song Ningyuan, who was originally waiting for good news and watching Qin Guang make a fool of himself at the Tiansong Water Group, was also sitting in his office watching the live video on the computer screen. His eyes kept blinking, thinking that either he was seeing things or there was a special effect in the video. Although I'm a second-generation rich kid who relied on my father to make a living, I've read a lot of books. You can't trick me like this, right? Did my Tiansong Water Group spy in the investigation team become a double agent? Is this a recording of the operation of another sewage treatment plant? If it wasn't for the familiar building in the frame, Song Ningyuan would have thought that it was the Tangshan industrial factory that he had visited several times, as well as Qin Guang, who occasionally showed his face in the frame, sitting there like a local god. Song Ningyuan would have thought so. The clock on the wall unknowingly reached 12 o'clock at night. He anxiously pushed the documents on the table to vent his frustration. He initially thought that he could easily make Qin Guang suffer a huge loss, but all of a sudden his beautiful dream fell through. Although the operating rights of the Tangshan industrial plant had not been officially handed over, Song Ningyuan had already invested tens of millions of operating costs in order to operate it. If Qin Guang was easily able to get away with it in this examination, then there would be variables, and his early investment would be in vain. As the leading enterprise in the environmental protection industry in China, Tiansong Water Group rarely failed. Song Ningyuan suddenly realized that he had unknowingly become the person in a very awkward situation, and he was being outmaneuvered by Qin Guang. He frowned and said to himself, "What the hell is going on?" Other than Qin Guang, the only person who knew about it, Lu Fei, temporarily left the Tangshan industrial plant. She had other things to do and she couldn't accompany Qin Guang here all the time. After Lu Fei left, Qin Guang's situation became even more lonely. The sun rose and set and the moon rose and fell. Unknowingly, another 2 days passed. Perhaps Comrade Li's sorrowful and indignant curse was effective. This morning the sky was filled with the sound of thunder, and soon there was a heavy downpour. Fortunately, Guoming quickly asked someone to set up a canopy for Qin Guang. Although the wind would still bring raindrops to Qin Guang, it was better than nothing. "Mr. Qin, why don't you take a rest?" Seeing that Qin Guang's face was not quite right, and his lips were slightly blue, Guoming tentatively suggested. Qin Guang shook his head with some difficulty. "No, I can't go." If he left at this time, the mud that had been suppressed at the bottom of the pool like cement would all collapse and float up in an instant, and all his previous efforts would be in vain. He was a dead duck who was forced to do something beyond his abilities, and he couldn't give up halfway no matter what. Otherwise, how could he be worthy of his efforts and shamelessly pretend to be the lord of the land here? Only Qin Guang knew his hardships. In the past 2 days, his earth-burster ability had gradually been completely exhausted. Fortunately, The density of elemental power in the outside world had increased a little more in the past 2 days. In addition, as time went by, he also improved his power distribution technique bit by bit, striving to achieve a better suppression effect with less elemental power consumption. As the most high-end elemental creature even in the endless divine realm, the Earthburster's original use of ability could be called perfect, even if it only relied on instinct. But perfection was not the limit, there was still exquisite perfection above perfection. Just like a tiger, an ordinary tiger could be said to be invincible in nature, possessing instinctive perfect hunting skills. But if it was trained by a professional, combined with human intelligence, it could even let a tiger master a higher level of hunting skills that surpassed the instincts of ordinary animals. This was the case for Qin Guang at this time. He relied on his natural instinct to make his rough and perfect use of the Earthburster's ability become more scientific and exquisite perfection, just enough to achieve a balance. The mud that was suppressed at the bottom of the pool also slightly loosened from the initial hard solidification, becoming a semi-gelatinous state similar to the separation of oil and water. It sank and sank at the bottom of the pool but did not float up. The consumption of elemental power was barely enough, but what really tortured him was the double pressure on his body and will. He couldn't close his eyes for 2 days, and his body was tense for 2 consecutive days. Even if he had the strongest physique, he still felt exceptionally strained. Feeling the cold raindrops falling on his face, looking up at the newly built asbestos roof above his head, Qin Guang's heart was desolate. He felt that he was really becoming more and more like the city god in the city god temple or the earth god in the earth god temple. As the saying goes, you are caught in a cocoon of your own making, and you cannot escape from the evils you bring upon yourself. What kind of evil did I run into to have to suffer like this? Serves you right, it's your own fault for coming up with this rotten idea. Lu Li's gloating voice sounded in his heart. Qin Guang silently turned his head. I really don't want to talk to you, it's all your fault. Comrade Old Li finally found a time when there was no one to disturb or block his way, so he braced himself and ran to Qin Guang's side with an umbrella. Mr. Qin. Hello, Teacher Li, you know me? Qin Guang grunted. Sister Lu Fei introduced you to me before she left. My school's Dean Han also specially sent me a text message yesterday. You are Dean Han's teacher, so I have to respect you. Then Xiao Qin, let me ask you something. What is the matter with the mud in your pond? What? There's no such thing. How can there be mud in the pond? Qin Guang was exceptionally tired as he lied with his eyes wide open. What exactly are you after? I heard from old Jin and Yanjing that if you let go of this matter, they will find a way to compensate you in other ways. Qin Guang sighed. Teacher Li, I'm suffering in silence. I can't say anything about it, but I can guarantee you that it definitely won't be a cancer that will bring disaster to the country and the people. You guys should leave early. If Tongshan Factory really can't meet the standards, I can go back and cooperate with Lu Chemical Industry to invest more to rebuild Tongshan Factory. Teacher Li, can you guys be merciful and let Xiaoguang Environmental Protection go? Old Li didn't expect Qin Guang to come and beg him. He knew that Qin Guang's promise was extremely heavy, so he was a little moved. Alright, I'll go back and discuss with the other members of the review team. Thank you, Teacher Li. I'm a little tired, I'll take a nap first. Qin Guang closed his eyes again. After a while, Old Li walked back with a helpless expression. Many people in the review team objected. They said that we must investigate for 7 days. Our process of coming here was reported to the whole country. If we leave early, we won't be able to explain to the society. Qin Guang glanced at Old Li. He had a feeling that things were not that simple. So I forget it then. Who cares? I have to bear it no matter what. You have Zhang Liang's plan, I have the explosive power. After Old Li left, a deputy team leader of the review team came over mysteriously after a while. Hello, Director Qin. Qin Guang looked up slightly. Go ahead. Qin Guang didn't have that much respect for the other members of the review team that he was not close with. To be honest, Mr. Song Ning Yuan from Tiansong Water asked me to bring you a message. Oh? What does he mean? Qin Guang knew that there must be spies from Tiansong in the review team, and there was more than one. Otherwise, Old Li's suggestion would not have been rejected so firmly. Chapter 1028. These are Mr. Song's exact words. He hopes to write off all his past grudges with you, Mr. Qin. You didn't lose out back then, and Mr. Song can make the decision on this matter. When the time comes, Xia Guang won't have to transfer it for free, and he'll get at least 50 million in transfer fees. Qin Guang laughed coldly. What kind of joke is this? I spent 170 million on Xia Guang, and he'll only give me 50 million? Don't joke, Mr. Qin. Even if Xia Guang Environmental Protection passes the inspection, it'll only have 4 months of operating rights left. There's no point in you holding on, Mr. Qin. After 4 months you'll still get nothing. For Mr. Song to offer 50 million for 4 months of operating rights is already charity. Tiansong Water is only bleeding money to push forward the reconstruction of Tongshan Industrial Complex as soon as possible. Otherwise he wouldn't have to make such a concession. Don't you think so? What's more, our inspection has only just begun. Whether we can pass or not is still another matter. Qin Guang glanced at him, not wanting to pay him any more attention. Just looking at him annoyed him. Song Ningyuan's greeting seemed like a concession, but it was clearly to let this grandson use 50 million to mock him. If he really had any sincerity he wouldn't have asked someone else to bring the message, but come here personally to lower his head. I'm not fighting for your 50 million, I'm fighting for my pride. What's more, even if Song Ningyuan were to fork out 50 million more to let Tiansong Water obtain Tongshan Industrial Complex, they would still make at least 400 to 500 million net after another 20 years of operating rights. This made Qin Guang exceptionally unhappy. This feeling was like he was about to eat a piece of meat in his mouth, only to have it snatched away from his anus by his second brother in Africa. Mr. Qin? Help me bring a message to Song Ningyuan. Go ahead. Tell him to stay where he wants to be. Mr. Qin, why do you have to make things difficult for yourself? Qin Guang turned back impatiently and glared at him. Get lost, don't bother me. The old man hurriedly slipped away, glancing disdainfully at Qin Guang from time to time, thinking, damn it, you're retarded. After suffering for so long, Qin Guang's heart had already loosened a little. He also felt that his inexplicable persistence was a little silly. But now that the matter was halfway done, Song Ningyuan, who was an eyesore to him, suddenly provoked him. Qin Guang's stubborn temper had to get the better of him. If you want to do it, I won't let you do it now. This was not just a matter of face but money. Now that Song Ningyuan had raised the price to 50 million, as long as he could get through the investigation he would be able to raise the price even if he wanted to sell it. I won't sell it to you even if I have to. Moreover, if Tiansong Water Group can invest in the reconstruction, I can also invest in the reconstruction with Sister Lu Fei's support. I can also renegotiate the operating period. It's clear that it's a stable profit and not a loss. It's beneficial to the country and the people, and I can also earn a good reputation. It's tiring, but why wouldn't I do it? If Song Ningyuan knew that he had secretly asked someone to talk to Qin Guang, not only did it not have a positive effect, but it had also aroused Qin Guang's fighting spirit. He was afraid that his intestines would turn green. Time passed bit by bit, and the investigation of Tongshan Industrial Factory gradually caused a stir in Tongshan City. Among the Tongshan locals, there was no one who did not pay attention to this matter. As the investigation team officially entered Tongshan Industrial Factory with great fanfare, everyone had prepared firecrackers, wanting to celebrate the cancer of Xia Guang Environmental Protection, finally dying of old age. Everyone could finally be free from the sea of bitterness. However, as time passed, some news of the investigation gradually leaked out. There were still many local people quietly running to the industrial factory's water outlet to watch. The water that was discharged was so clear and translucent that it could be used to make tea. The people were also confused. They did not know much about technology. They only thought that the new boss of Tongshan Industrial Factory had magic, could turn stone into gold, and could turn something rotten into something magical. Ordinary people were so easily satisfied. They did not care who was running the factory, and they did not even care if the factory was rebuilt or not. They only wanted to see the water coming out of the factory become clear and bright. They only wanted to see the water in Tongshan River return to its former emerald green. They could swim in the river, fish, bathe and use the river water to irrigate or raise fish. No matter what, the water coming out of Tongshan Industrial Factory was really gratifying to see. Among the people of Tongshan City, there were probably only a few people who had a headache at this time. They were Chief Engineer Yang and his group, who had asked for N+1 severance pay when Qin Guang arrived at Tongshan Industrial Factory. Originally, Chief Engineer Yang and the others were already very annoyed when they were chased away after only getting the last 3 months' salary. They could only watch helplessly as others could at least get N+1 more. Then they took the lead in causing trouble but failed. They did not get any benefits and were even locked up in the detention center. Chief Engineer Yang's family used their connections everywhere and spent tens of thousands of yuan, but they were still detained for a full 48 hours before they barely got the treatment of being released on bail pending trial. Chief Engineer Yang, who had tried to steal a chicken but ended up losing the rice, was now watching helplessly as Tongshan Industrial Factory seemed to be able to survive the investigation. The N+1 severance pay that Qin Guang had promised to the others was going to become a large bonus that Qin Guang had mentioned. If it was him, with 8 years of work and a monthly salary of 6 to 7,000 yuan, he would get 120,000 to 30,000 yuan. Just because of his impulsive decision at that time, he had lost as much as 150,000 to 60,000 yuan in one go. How could he not be angry? How could he not suffer internal injuries? He simply could not figure it out. As the technical chief engineer, he had worked in Tongshan Industrial Factory for 8 years. He knew the situation in the factory like the back of his hand. He was sure that even if he added medicine, it would not be possible to pass the investigation. But what was going on? What the hell was going on? In the middle of the night, when there was no one around, he pulled a few employees who had been driven away with him and quietly ran to the water outlet with a flashlight. He found that the water was as clear as the rumors said. He scooped up a spoonful of water and did not smell any strange odors. He had to believe it even if he didn't want to believe it. He had to accept his fate. It's all your fault. If you hadn't taken the lead to cause trouble, would we have followed you? Otherwise, if we all stayed now, what does it have to do with us whether Tongshan Industrial Factory changes hands in the end? Tens of thousands of yuan were all gone because of you. Chief Engineer Yang, who was feeling depressed, was kicked in the butt by the mechanical repair class monitor who was standing behind him. He fell into the ditch with a splash. After drinking a lot of dirty water, Chief Engineer Yang stood up angrily, turned around and roared, F***CK. Did I ask you to follow me? I lost more than you. F***CK. As he shouted angrily, he climbed up with his body wet, but as soon as he climbed up, he was kicked back into the ditch by a few of his little followers. Most of the time, people often didn't admit their own mistakes when they suffered losses. Instead, they would subconsciously find a scapegoat in their hearts and blame their wrong decisions on the influence of others. At this time, the middle and lower level employees of the former Tongshan Industrial Factory, who had also suffered a lot of losses, had this mentality. They wouldn't reflect on the fact that it was their own decision to leave the factory after falling out with Chen Guang. Instead, they would simply push the blame to Chief Engineer Yang. Chief Engineer Yang fell into the ditch again and gritted his teeth as he looked up at the people above. Are you crazy? I'll F***king kill you. Come on, I've been unhappy with you for a long time. If you weren't so useless, would Tongshan Industrial Factory be like this? Right now, we should be enjoying our bonuses in the factory like everyone else. That's right. Damn it. Poor Chief Engineer Yang. He was already so old, but he was still repeatedly kicked back into the gutter in this cold autumn day. It wasn't until he was beaten black and blue and the others were afraid that he would die and left that Chief Engineer Yang climbed up the table while trembling. He touched his trouser pocket. The phone he had just bought had already been completely destroyed by the water. His heart was filled with endless desolation and uncontrollable anger. He hated it. He hated the original subordinates or followers who had beaten him up today. He also hated Qin Guang's coldness and ruthlessness. He hated Qin Guang even more for deliberately using him as a model even though he had a way. He didn't feel that he had done anything wrong at all. He felt that Qin Guang was clearly targeting him and wanted to use him to establish his dominance. Chief Engineer Yang stomped his feet and spat in the direction of Tongshan Industrial Factory. Then he limped and disappeared into the darkness. Even the reeds on the side of the road could feel his anger and grievance. Unknowingly, another 2 days had passed. The inconceivable stone Buddha earthly god, Qin Guang, had already been sitting at the water inlet for an entire 6 days. Qin Guang's condition looked terrible. His face was pale and sallow. His body trembled inexplicably from time to time, like a patient with severe hepatitis. Even Guoming began to be afraid. He tried to ask Qin Guang to go to the hotel to have a good rest, but he was flatly refused. Qin Guang's answer made Guoming feel despair. At that time he said, I'm here. The tower is here. Guoming wanted to persuade him, but he didn't continue after this sentence. He was like an Indian ascetic, and he also practiced a temporary silent meditation. He didn't understand what Qin Guang meant by, I'm here, the tower is here. He always felt that it contained an inexplicable strong will. It seemed that once Qin Guang left the original place, the sewage treatment plant would explode. I'm here meant that he must stay there and not move. But what does the tower is here mean? A water tower? Our plant doesn't have a water tower. Is he hinting to us that we need to build a new cooling tower because we need to use evaporation and condensation for the wastewater pretreatment? Guoming, who was confused, kept mumbling on the way back to the office. He bumped into Lu Fei, who was rushing back. "Manager Lu, I have a favor to ask of you." Guoming quickly stopped Lu Fei. Lu Fei nodded. "What's wrong? Say it." "You haven't been here for 2 days, so you don't know how serious the situation is. Now Qin Guang is almost possessed. His expression is scary. I asked him to rest, but he refused. Please help me persuade him." "What is this?" "Even if he is worried about the investigation, he doesn't have to sit there all the time. My nephew sat in the internet cafe for 3 days. When we dragged him out, he almost died. Qin Guang has been sitting there for 6 days. Other than eating and going to the toilet, he hasn't moved." Lu Fei waved her hand casually. "Manager Guo, don't worry. Anyone in the world will get into trouble, but he won't." "Are you kidding me? A great mage who can destroy the world will die from sitting for a long time? No one would believe it." Lu Fei also didn't think that Qin Guang would have that much determination. It would be a pity if he died. "Listen to me, he's starting to talk nonsense." "What nonsense?" He said, "I'm here. The tower is here." Lu Fei, she thought to herself, he's seriously ill. The world's best Tower of Swords player started to recite Garen's lines. Previously he had tried to coerce and entice him to play League of Legends with him, but he refused with all kinds of excuses. "How about we fix the canopy on his head? Is it because he's cold?" Lu Fei gave a suggestion to Guoming before she ran in Qin Guang's direction and asked the moment she arrived. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I feel good." "Really?" Qin Guang nodded heavily. "Of course it's better than ever. I don't think this is a bad thing for me." Chapter 1029. Qin Guang didn't spout nonsense. Over the past 4 days, the Earth Exploder ability in his body had been at the critical point. It was overdrawn from time to time, but recovered from time to time. Not only that, the more he used it, the more he found that the efficiency of absorbing the Earth element power from the outside world had become higher. It seemed that because of the continuous use, the Earth Exploder ability of the ultimate elemental creature had awakened a powerful instinct. If he used to absorb the Earth element power around his body, he could absorb the Earth element power from an assumed concentration of 10,000 units to only 10 units. Now, the gradually awakening ultimate elemental creature's instinct allowed him to completely absorb the Earth element power around his body to only 0.1 units. The effect was as outstanding as a domestic vacuum pump being upgraded to an imported German laboratory product. Just like the principle of molecular diffusion, Qin Guang made the concentration of Earth element power around his body lower, so the Earth element power that gradually spread from a distance would be faster and more. In the past, his absorption range was about 200 kilometers, but now, with him as the center, his absorption range had gradually spread to thousands of kilometers away, and could even slowly affect the whole world. He was relying on his own strength to continuously reduce the concentration of Earth element that had already dispersed over the whole Earth. Qin Guang even had confidence that no matter what the world would change in the future, with his continuous absorption like a black hole, he could at least guarantee that there wouldn't be any Earth element power left for other creatures in the world. Even if the world was filled with more elemental power than the Dolua world in the future, he could at least make this world have one less element power. The upper limit of the Earth Exploder was the God Emperor. Qin Guang himself didn't know where the limit of his absorption power was. In short, I don't care if you are metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, forest, fire, mountain, earth or light, dark, earth, fire, water and wind, I will make you lack Earth element. I will undoubtedly become the only Earth elemental creature on the Earth. I am Leap Earth, what can I do for you? In addition, the awakening of the Earth Exploder ability made his perfect body, which was almost overwhelmed, stabilize the situation. Previously, when he was the most exhausted, he even faintly had the illusion that his body was about to collapse. But later, the super regeneration and self-healing ability of the Earth Sauce Bomber quickly awakened, so that his recovery speed just happened to suppress the loss caused by overwork. Right now, his complexion only appeared to be poor. His complexion was also the color of dirt, but it actually matched the characteristics of an ultimate Earth elemental creature. The power of Leap Earth had been awakened for the second time. Super self-healing, no fear of fatigue, it was like a self-lubricating machine. Qin Guang himself was pleasantly surprised. He did not expect that he would accidentally discover the method to improve the Earth Burster's superpower. Sure enough, he had verified the truth that people had to struggle, and only with struggle could there be progress. Lu Fei no longer disturbed him. After chatting with him for a while, she turned around and went to Dalu Chemical. Chen Guang also closed his eyes and forced himself to meditate. But after a long time he came back to his senses and found that something was wrong. Guoming, this guy, actually brought people to build 3 walls around him. He even covered the roof with red glazed tiles. Damn it, I've really become the lord of the land this time. I say, old Gua, I feel like I'm still missing a couplet. Guoming, who was admiring his masterpiece, was startled by Chen Guang, who suddenly woke up. Ah. The first couplet, protect the 4 directions. The second couplet, bless the peace of the village. The horizontal couplet, bless the righteous God. Guoming reacted, isn't that the earth temple? Chen Guang said angrily, isn't this the earth temple you built for me? How about I change the roof to green? F***ck off. Another 2 days passed. The concentration of chemical oxygen demand and other indicators in the treatment units in the sewage station had risen, but it was still below the standard line. Guoming's heart gradually calmed down. Even the most difficult heavy metal ions were within the controllable range. According to the current trend, even if it continues to improve, it won't exceed the standard tomorrow. This meant that the inspection should be passed without any mishaps. This kid, he can really handle it. These few days expertly felt like he had aged 10 years, and there were more white hairs on his head. He stood next to Guoming and looked at Chen Guang's earth temple from afar, sighing sincerely. Guoming blushed slightly. After all, it was quite embarrassing to have a crazy boss. Yeah. Although I don't know what he is persevering for, I feel that he is very powerful. A young girl, who was also a member of the inspection team, looked in that direction with admiration. Expertly patted Guoming's shoulder with flagging interest. Anyway, you guys are on your own. With that, the poor old man staggered further and further away. In his long life, he had never encountered such a situation. He was very confused. He even quietly installed a flow meter in the water inlet and outlet and observed the water situation of the Tangshan industrial plant. However, after 6 days of continuous monitoring and observation, the water balance was indeed perfect. There was no sneaky discharge or mixing of water. There was no problem at all. Old Master Jean, who was far away in Beijing, was also confused. He knew Expert Li's standard very well, and he wouldn't be easily fooled. Since he couldn't find any problems, there was only one explanation. The notorious Tangshan industrial plant could really meet the standards. Song Ningyuan, who was waiting for good news in Beijing, was also confused. These days, as soon as he arrived at the office, he would sit in front of the computer and look at the information sent by his insider in the inspection team. The dazzling red parameters of reaching the standard were like hooked scimitars stabbing into his heart, making him feel worse than if he had eaten a hornet. Although he hadn't seen Chen Guang for a long time, and the two of them hadn't had any direct conversation until now, Song Ningyuan vaguely saw the disdainful expression on Chen Guang's face when he was Tang Ying's shield. That loathsome fellow was like a vengeful spirit that could not be dispersed. He had turned into a fly and was buzzing in her ears, mocking her for overestimating herself and being ridiculous. Looking at the monitor, Song Ningyuan's mind started to hallucinate. It was as if he could see Chen Guang's arrogant and annoying smile when he was on the show. He seemed to be saying to himself, with just you? You want to fight with me? Song Ningyuan finally lost control and fiercely punched his own monitor. The latest Apple monitor, which was worth thousands of yuan, fell to the ground and sparks flew. I have a grudge against you, right? I'm picking up girls and you're here to ruin my business. I endured it. I stayed far away from you and didn't provoke you. My son inherited my father's business and worked hard to run my family's Tiansong water project, and you're here to ruin my business. Your own Qingguang group is clearly doing well now. Even if you fart out of your teeth, the profits will still be hundreds of millions. Why do you have to make things difficult for me? Did I dig up your ancestral grave or what? What grudge? Also, Qingguang's attitude towards Xieyu was not good, and the most he said was scram. Later, Qingguang's attitude towards Song Ningyuan's deputy team leader in the review team was also very bad, and the moment he opened his mouth he also said, scram. It was said that one had to look at the master before beating a dog. Song Ningyuan had tolerated it previously, but now that he had been beaten by Qingguang, he finally understood. The few scram that Qingguang said to Xieyu and the deputy team leader was clearly shouting at him. Who would have thought that I, the dignified Song Ningyuan, who has the backing of Tiansong Water Project, the leader of the environmental protection industry in China, would be slapped in the face by Qingguang in my own backyard? I hate it. Mr. Song, what's wrong? The secretary rushed in from the outside in a panic. She looked at the monitor that had been broken into 2 pieces on the ground and was terrified. Song Ningyuan touched his face and said through gritted teeth, "Nothing." A day later, with the last sample up to standard, the week-long review of Tangshan Industrial Plant officially ended. This incredible news swept through Tangshan City in an instant, shocking the officials and the people. Then, as if the news had grown legs, it spread across the country at an even faster speed. Tangshan Industrial Plant and Shaoguang Environmental Protection, which had been criticized countless times and was known as a weirdo in the history of environmental protection, had met the standards. Even the staunchest anti-Shaoguang environmental protection loyalist, Deputy Director Pang, silently examined his heart. Had he wrongly accused Qin Guang? Was he actually the world's #1 miracle doctor, and had the ability to revive the dead? Could he bring the already rotten Tangshan factory back to its former glory? Not to mention the uproar inside Tangshan Industrial Plant, other than Lu Fei, even Guoming, Hualing, Zhongyu, and the other 30-odd employees who had personally participated in the entire process were confused, as if they were in a dream. As soon as the review team left, Guoming led all the employees straight to the water intake. Qin Guang was still sitting on the swivel chair, eyes closed, motionless. His sallow face had completely turned into a muddy yellow, and his lips were a little cracked. He looked like a dignified monk. No, if not for the fact that he was a living person, just looking at his face, it was obvious that he had become a statue of the Earth God. One of the unlucky fellows suddenly raised his hands and prostrated himself on the ground. "Chief Qin. Mr. Qin has become the Earth God. The Earth God has blessed Tangshan Industrial Plant. He has blessed us. What are you all waiting for? Our mud can only sink because Mr. Qin is personally here to protect us. This is the manifestation of a deity. Hurry up and kowtow." Other than Guoming, Hualing, and Zhongyu, who were extremely embarrassed, the rest of the employees in the factory really did kowtow as if they were worshipping the Earth God. Lu Fei almost laughed out loud when she saw this. She suddenly took out 2 couplets from her bag and slapped them on the wall next to Qin Guang. The first couplet, "The family is safe." The second couplet, "Auspicious omen to avoid." The horizontal couplet, "Tangshan land." Qin Guang opened his eyes slightly and saw Lu Fei and Guoming's big faces right in front of him. "Are they all gone?" Guoming quickly replied, "Yes, they're gone. We passed." Before Qin Guang saw the group of people kneeling before him, he subconsciously felt that he should make use of this opportunity to show off. "How is it? You guys said that we're dead? I told you that there wouldn't be a problem. I told you that we could get through. Olgua, my company doesn't need guards. You still have to do your job here." The superstitious employee from before exclaimed again, "The Earth God really did show himself. The Earth God actually spoke." Qin Guang sat up straight and looked down. "Oh, what the hell? Where's the deity?" The quick-witted employee next to him patted his head. "Show my ass. This is Mr. Qin." Chapter 1030. In any case, the investigation was finally dealt with, and Qin Guang was finally free. He got up and came out of the land temple. Qin Guang patted the mud on his body and waved his hand. "Don't call me the landlord, just call me the god of fortune. What did I say before?" Qin Guang held Lu Fei's shoulders, and Miss Lu didn't mind that his body was covered in dust. Guoming was stunned and didn't react, but Lu Tao's eyes quickly lit up. "Don't tell me it's N+1, Qin Guang smiled and his body shook, revealing a domineering aura. "Wrong. It's 2N. Just give it out now. Everyone get ready to go to the finance department to get your bonus. Money is just a worldly possession and you have to keep your word. Anyway, it's not much." However, there was a very awkward situation. He had been sitting here for 9 days and didn't move, nor did he change his clothes, let alone take a bath. With his big movements, billowing smoke and dust flew around his body, and a strong smell soared into the sky. His whole body was surrounded by yellow smoke and dust. Those who didn't know would think that he was Dragon Ball Goku erupting with Scion's power, but those who knew Lu Fei was covered in dust. Lu Fei really couldn't stand it. She covered her nose and eyes, coughed violently and dodged to the side. "Oh my god, it's terrible, really terrible." Guoming next to him also pinched his nose and retreated. "That Mr. Qin, why don't you take a bath and change your clothes first? We'll talk about the bonus later?" The superstitious and stubborn employee came again. "Yes, the landlord has been contaminated by the mortal world, so hurry up and clean yourself. Qin Guang, get lost. Your bonus is gone." After simply cleaning up the cup that was hung on the water inlet to dry for 7 days, Qin Guang first drove back to the hotel in the city. Lu Fei didn't go with him, but went directly to the Dalu chemical factory. Although the review had been passed, adding drugs was not a permanent solution. The cost of this approach was too high and it was too difficult to achieve. The chemical sludge was always a big problem, so the next step must be put on the agenda immediately. If Lu Enterprise wanted to intervene, it would involve an investment of 200 million in cash. Lu Fei also had to prepare as soon as possible, so she chose to act separately from Qin Guang. However, Qin Guang knew that this was just an excuse for her to fool him. The truth was that she was afraid that she would suffocate to death on the way back to the hotel. Qin Guang didn't delay the matter of the bonus. As soon as he got out of the car, he took out his phone and transferred 2 million yuan to Xia Guang Environmental Protection's financial account. He asked Guoming to quickly distribute the bonus. As soon as the bonus was paid, the remaining 30 or so employees in the factory naturally cheered. Who didn't love money these days? Everyone sighed. President Qin was a good person, a really good person. No matter what would happen to the factory in the future, with President Chen's virtue of keeping his promises, ordinary bosses couldn't even touch him. Money was one aspect. The employees were now finally motivated to fight for the future of Tongshan Factory and Xia Guang Environmental Protection. Although Qin Guang had been extremely confident when he first came, and although everyone was encouraged by him at the time, they didn't believe it in their hearts. They only thought that he didn't know the industry, and that outsiders acted from the inside. That was why he boasted with passion and blind confidence, throwing out the promise that everyone would get a bonus of 2N after reaching the standard. But now his promise had come true. Even if this was just the last radiance of Xia Guang Environmental Protection, it could also show President Chen's determination. He must have been spending money like this not just for the remaining 4 months of operation. Otherwise there was no need to be so generous. He must have further plans. He would never let Xia Guang Environmental Protection die of old age. This meant that President Chen probably had a way to save the entire Xia Guang Environmental Protection and Tongshan Industrial Factory. Then everyone would no longer have to worry about the process of resigning and rehiring after Tiansong Water Group took over. The best thing in the world was an iron rice bowl. Who wouldn't want to keep an iron rice bowl? Who wouldn't like it? Thinking back to the day when President Chen first came, Chief Engineer Yang, who had led a team to cause trouble and then been chased away like a stray dog, the remaining employees couldn't hide their joy. Everyone stood in front of a multiple-choice question in history. With a single thought, we chose A and you chose B. The direct result of such a simple choice was that not only did we see the hope of keeping an iron rice bowl, but we also immediately got a bonus of several tens of thousands. Those who couldn't afford the down payment could immediately think of a way to buy a house in the city. Those who wanted to buy a car for a long time but didn't dare to buy it could immediately buy one. But all of you, for the sake of a small profit, in order to quickly find your next home, not only did you offend President Qin, but you also missed the opportunity now. You even missed the chance to get a bonus of several tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands. Without comparison there would be no harm. With comparison there would be showing off and ridicule. Qin Guang didn't need to instruct the remaining people in the factory to do things like beating a dog while it was down. Everyone could see that President Qin never kept a low profile. He was also very clear about what he liked and what he hated. It was in line with President Chen's style to say what he was happy about and let those short-sighted traitors, who went against the wheel of history, regret their actions. Therefore, as the bonus arrived, the WeChat group of the former employees of the Tongshan Industrial Factory was suddenly flooded with messages. Even Hua Ling and Zhong Yu, the 2 non-staff members, received an extra special bonus of 100,000 yuan each. This was also deliberately ordered by Qin Guang. Hua Ling and Zhong Yu's accurate tests and calculations were indispensable for them to be able to smoothly pass the test. Although the 2 girls were too embarrassed to take the money, they couldn't dissuade Qin Guang from giving it to them. He even praised the 2 of them as if not taking the money would be a great sin. Once the money arrived, Hua Ling and Zhong Yu dragged the others to send screenshots to the old WeChat group. Ha, we're rich. My son was just preparing to buy a new house in Wujing. He still needed more than 40,000 yuan for the down payment. This time it's just enough. I envy old Deng. I don't even have a wife. Tomorrow I'll go to see the houses in Lakeshore New City. I'll take a mortgage and buy a small apartment. The girl who went on a blind date last month complained that I don't have a house. I plan to buy a car. I'll save it first. Little Hua and little Zhong are still the best. They haven't even graduated yet, but they can each get 100,000 yuan. Amazing. You're not jealous of him, are you? This is what they deserve. Knowledge is power, understand? They're not ordinary university students, They're master students. Didn't you see how beautiful their experiments were? How complicated the calculation process was? Exactly. President Qin, this is called reward based on merit. Long live the Lord of the land. Get lost. Hualing, everyone don't be like this. Zhongyu and I are really sorry. We'll treat all the seniors to a meal later. Even though they knew that Chief Engineer Yang and the others were also in the old WeChat group, the staff in the group were still chatting enthusiastically. They were deliberately provoking Chief Engineer Yang and the others to make them feel bad and sprinkle salt on their wounds. In professional terms, this was called a stab in the back. Qin Guang, who was taking a shower in the hotel, still did not know that his employees were so quick-witted and considerate. Otherwise he would have doubled his bonus. That's right. People are like bears in a nest and they will be like bears in a pile. One is marked by the company one keeps, and one is blackened by the company one keeps. Like boss, like employee. An employee must be in sync with the boss to be considered a good employee. Back then he did not even bat an eyelid when he promised Chief Engineer Yang a 2N bonus. Wasn't his goal to anger Chief Engineer Yang to death? Qin Guang wanted others to see that those who followed him would prosper, and those who opposed him would perish. Being able to have such subjective initiative, these guys were all promising talents. Poor Chief Engineer Yang and the others. When they saw the messages in the WeChat group, even though they knew that those people were doing it on purpose, they could not control their emotions at all. They gritted their teeth and glared at them in anger. What the hell is this? We should have had it too. But now, those two interns had it and each of them had 100,000. We didn't get anything at all. The leader of the mechanical repair class slammed the table and called another 7 or 8 of his brothers to go downstairs. Now that the rice had been cooked, they could not return to the factory and they could not get the bonus. However, the anger in their hearts could not be extinguished, and they had to find an outlet to vent. Alright, there's no need to say anything. Let's go beat up old Yang. This unlucky guy was the one who set the bad example. Old Yang still did not know that danger was approaching. He was lying on his sofa, gritting his teeth as his wife changed the medicine on his face. His wife did not hold back either. While changing the medicine, she looked down at old Yang's new phone screen from time to time. It was the frequent messages in the WeChat group. She muttered, Look, it's all your fault. Lu Tao, that idiot, took 50,000. Look at you. You didn't get a single cent, and you caused our family to lose more than 30,000. Are you stupid? Old Yang roared, Shut up. What do you know, bitch? It's not my fault. Qin Guang wanted to establish his dominance on me from the start. He did it on purpose. Even if I didn't jump out, he still wanted to punish me. *CK. Do you believe that I'll give you 2 slaps if you speak any more nonsense? You still have a temper, huh? You were beaten black and blue outside, and now you're acting like a tyrant in front of your wife. Yang, why are you so capable? Old Yang's wife threw the medicine on the sofa, turned around and went back into the house angrily. Old Yang stood up, panting. He looked at the door that had been slammed shut, and his chest felt so tight that he wanted to punch the wall. It was as if he had been abandoned by the world in just a few days. At that moment his cell phone rang. He picked it up and saw that it was an unfamiliar number. Old Yang was in a fit of anger and he didn't even think about it. It must be some kind of harassment call to promote financial management. He was annoyed. But in less than 2 minutes the unfamiliar call came in again. It was the same number. Old Yang was puzzled. Who could it be? He picked up the phone, and a voice that sounded like music to him came from the other side. Hello, is this Yang Ditsai from Tongshan Industrial Factory? Sir, who are you? I'm no longer working at Tongshan Industrial Factory, but I'm indeed Yang Ditsai. Oh, that's good. I'm Song Ningyuan, the Senior Director of Tiansong Water. You should know me. Old Yang, who had felt that his life was gloomy a moment ago, suddenly lit up. He felt that he had seen a new dawn in his life. On the other side, Qin Guang took a comfortable shower, then lay on the hotel bed and didn't want to get up. On the one hand, he was indeed a little tired. On the other hand, since Lu Fei was also in Tongshan, he didn't stink after taking a shower. Why not talk to Sister Lu Fei about life? He picked up his cell phone and looked at it. He also dragged it to his old WeChat group, and then he was amused by the actions of these witty employees. He felt that the money was really well spent. He switched to the desktop of his cell phone and was about to call Lu Fei when Guoming called first. Qin Guang. Not good. Guoming's voice sounded a little flustered. Qin Guang wondered, what's wrong? The sludge in the pool has floated up again. A lot. It's all in the anaerobic pool and there's even more in the aerobic pool. The sedimentation pool and stabilization pool are also full of floating mud. Qin Guang was stunned for a moment, but he immediately reacted. He had left in a hurry and forgot to say hello to Guoming, scaring him. He didn't use his ability to suppress the mud. Of course, the mud would float up, but this was not a problem. It's okay. It's a normal phenomenon. We added so many drugs before, so of course it will form mud. It would be unscientific if there was no mud, okay? Let's start from now on. That's right. I will arrange it now. However, there is too much mud now. The power of our belt deslimer can't keep up. A lot of it will probably flow out from the outlet. So, Qin Guang nodded. It's okay. Anyway, it can't be worse than before. After hanging up the phone, Qin Guang sighed. It was inevitable that Guoming would be scared. Qin Guang was also quite helpless. However, he couldn't squat there to suppress the mud for the rest of his life, right? He had no choice but to go outside for the next 2 days. The cost of the entire plant's desliming was not small. It was a big project, but he had to do it. In a sense, desliming was actually pollution treatment. It turned the pollutants dissolved in the water into solid sludge that could be collected. After dehydration, it was transported to different places, either to make cement or to be incinerated. If it was more toxic, it had to be sent to the hazardous waste center for landfill at a higher cost. It was better than letting these pollutants directly enter the natural water environment. However, as soon as the review team left, the discharged water turned into instant coffee. If the people saw it, they would definitely gossip. However, Qin Guang didn't feel guilty. The sludge that was wrapped in water now looked scary. In terms of harm to the natural environment, it was much better than the substandard wastewater from before. If he really felt guilty, he would wait a few more days for the pollution concentration to rise again. After the major biochemical treatment sections completely collapsed, he would blame himself. Next week at the latest, he had to finalize the reconstruction with Sister Lu Fei. Then, through the park management committee, he would inform the other enterprises in the industrial park to prepare to store water. If it couldn't be stored, then stop production. The industrial plant would have to be completely rebuilt. Your clay bodhisattva can't even protect itself, so you better pray for yourself. Since he was involved in this mess, Qin Guang didn't want to just leave. He wanted to do something for the environment with a very serious attitude. However, rice had to be eaten one bite at a time. Things could only be done one at a time. There would be some twists and turns in the middle. Some of the sludge would have to be discharged, and he had no choice. Qin Guang wasn't an absolute Virgin Mary. Of course, he didn't need to blame himself for things that he couldn't control. Qin Guang waited for another 10 minutes before Lu Fei arrived. As soon as she entered the door, she reported a piece of good news to Qin Guang. She had almost finished talking about the matchmaking between Xia Guang Environmental Protection and the water company under Lu Chemical. About the day after tomorrow, her father, Lu Jiachuan, would personally announce the decision at the shareholders' meeting and make a nominal vote. Most of the shareholders of Lu Chemical were the Lu family's own people. Passing the vote was a sure thing. However, Lu Fei had to go back to Lu's headquarters in person to make a more comprehensive endorsement to the elders. Qin Guang's heart was relieved and his heart felt more at ease. Although he still had to spend more money to make things seem less perfect, imperfection was also a kind of regret. There were not so many perfect things in the world. Hey, Sister Lu Fei, anyway, you've helped me a lot this time. How do you think I should reward you? Lu Fei's heart warmed under his meaningful gaze. She lay down beside him and curled her body like a snake. You have to be gentler with me. 2 hours later, Lu Fei forcefully put on her clothes and got out of bed. Qin Guang still wanted to ask her to stay, but she shook her head and replied, I have other matters to attend to in the company, so I have to leave. I have to go back to Lu's headquarters to participate in the vote tomorrow. Time is tight. Anyway, just wait for my good news. I'm leaving. Qin Guang reluctantly watched her leave. His nose was still filled with the decadent smell of the room. Then he threw his head back and fell down. It had been 9 days. He could finally sleep peacefully. Chapter 1031. Picking up his watch, he saw that it was already past 4 in the afternoon. Qin Guang decided not to go to the factory today. He would rest in the hotel for the rest of the day and go to the factory tomorrow morning. Anyway, he had nothing to do. Although he said that he was going to lie down, it was not a simple rest. He planned to go online and watch the latest episodes of Women in High. My God, the publicity of the film. Although he was lazy and did not like to take care of things, he still had to pay attention to it. He was going to spend up to 200 million yuan. After thinking about it, he could only rely on Qinguang Group to recoup his capital. Women was still doing well. Big Beard was working on the post-production and had already decided on the release date. With Chen Guang's perfect acting skills, the other actors in the film also performed exceptionally well. Big Beard was now completely confident that this commercial film, which was originally just to make money, could reach a higher goal. Recently, at the behest of Big Beard, the main cast of the movie had been doing all sorts of things when they were being interviewed or participating in variety shows, increasing the exposure and public opinion of the movie in various ways. Rin Chong, Zhao Yueling, Zhou, as well as Shi Lu, who had been rising in fame recently, practically all of them were shooting their mouths off. Whenever someone mentioned women and asked about Chen Guang's performance on the screen, they wouldn't just raise their thumbs up. Instead, their eyes would light up with a look of worship on their faces. They couldn't wait to join the almighty divine sect and become a fanatical believer of an almighty superhuman. As for Jiang Yage and Jin Shirue, the two most loyal fans of Chen Guang, they were almost as good as the top 7 braggers in the world. Together with the braggers Zhan and Ku in the world of basketball, the braggers Luo and Mei in the world of football, and the braggers Tiger and Lion in the world of animals, they formed the top 7 braggers in the world. In addition, the internal staff of the film crew kept sending out promotional articles at the speed of 1 article a day. It was impossible not to read them. These things were said to be internal leaks, but with the mature management of Big Beardy's team, in fact, the choice of words and sentences in every draft was carefully chosen. It was guaranteed to tickle people's hearts. If they didn't go to the cinema to watch it, they would be going against their conscience. In any case, everyone had to brag about it first. They would only boast about the film to the skies and trick people into going to the cinema first. They would not be afraid that people would turn against them after watching it. Instead, it was very likely that they would be able to get more water and replicate the success of the domestically produced cartoon, The Return of the Great Sage, from a few years ago. The plot of the movie could not be considered innovative, nor was it forced to be profound. However, as a famous director in the industry, Big Beard had a good grasp of the narrative structure of the movie. When the time came, the story would definitely be closely linked, with ups and downs, and the narrative would be tight and compact. Not only could it allow people to feel the visual and spiritual impact of a large commercial film, but it also allowed people to find reflections on life. The most important thing was that Big Beard had confidence in Chen Guang's acting skills. He had confidence in the performance of the entire cast and crew. Whether it was the fans who had seen Chen Guang's plays before, the critics, or those who had not, Big Beard Deng was confident that when they came out of the cinema, they would definitely not be able to say a word of no. Even if there were really blind people who went against their conscience and deliberately stood on the negative side to spew slander, these people would not be able to stop a car with their bare hands. They would only be drowned in the long river of good reviews. The more Big Beard edited the post-production, the more confidence he had. The movie had already come this far. If it was still a flop, then he, Big Beard Deng, should not be in this industry anymore. He should just go home and plant sweet potatoes. On the other hand, Bamboo Platform, Chili Satellite TV, and Qingguang Media's Hi, My God! variety show was being promoted by both Earth and Net. It was also continuously attacking the netizens' eyeballs at a crazy frequency. As this show did not have Qingguang's appearance for the time being, it did not have its own hot topic. Therefore, in terms of operating ideas, they needed to learn more from the successful experience of other shows. Warming up and creating hype was only the first step. When it was officially released, they had to follow up with more hype ideas. In this aspect, Qingguang Media was relatively lacking in experience. However, Bamboo Platform and Chili Satellite TV were familiar with this. Fortunately, Chu Zijin's learning ability was also very strong. She could always come up with ideas that made people's eyes light up. She did not ruin Qingguang's reputation. Qingguang roughly swept a glance at the situation on the internet and was rather satisfied with it. The popularity of the newly established Qingguang culture had gradually subsided. After all, this was only a management company that controlled the contracts of artists. There was no need to maintain a high popularity. Regardless of whether it was an artist or an internet celebrity, in the end they had to rely on their works to speak. Things at the level of capital could at most be used as gossip after a meal. There was no meaning in maintaining a high popularity. The audience would only watch the show in the beginning. As time passed, they would eventually turn their attention in other directions. When he looked at the time again, it was already 6 o'clock in the evening. Qingguang changed into a jacket, wore a mask and sunglasses, and wandered out to look for food. He was happily sitting at the Chinese food stall by the river and eating heartily when he received a call from Guoming. Qingguang stuffed food into his mouth as he asked, "How's the mud drainage going?" Initially, Guoming wanted to say something, but he hesitated before he decisively said, "Qin Guang, I have a piece of bad news for you." "Speak." "Today, all of our mud pumps were operating at full capacity for the whole day. We even hired 70 to 80 temporary workers from outside to stand by the pool and fish continuously. We even called the tanker trucks from Tangshan City over, but it's still too slow. The most troublesome thing is that our belt filter presses are not enough. Now, I've started to directly pull out the mud that hasn't been dehydrated from the mud storage pool. The cost has suddenly increased by a large amount. There are at least 100 trucks of dehydrated mud. If it's not dehydrated, I estimate that there will be at least 400 trucks. Pulling one truck will cost 2,000 yuan. This is burning money. But even so, I estimate that it will take at least 4 days to drain all the mud." Qin Guang pinched his fingers and calculated. Cost more than 1,000,000 yuan to buy medicine. Looking at it now, it would also cost more than 1,000,000 yuan to drain the mud. The operating cost of running a business was really not something that anyone could bear. If it was someone with poor mental quality, they would have fainted when they heard this number. It's quite a headache, but there's no other way. This money has to be spent. But now there's another problem. The receiving units that we contacted before are almost full. I just calculated that the remaining capacity of those units is now only 200 trucks. Qin Guang was puzzled. Then can't we just slowly drain the mud? Why do we have to drain the mud? Guoming sighed. Next is the worst news I have to tell you. We can't be slow. Old Gua, can we finish what we have to say at once? I also just found out about it. About an hour ago we were reported by someone. We were reported again? Who did it? Yang Ditsai. It's the chief engineer Yang that we chased away. Qin Guang's eyes widened. How dare he? Guoming sighed. I suspect that he has found Tian Song as his backer. It's my negligence. It should be in the morning. Not long after you left, after the mud floated up, Yang Ditsai brought a few people to our factory's water outlet to take a video. They recorded the mud flowing out of the water. Now, their video and articles are not only posted on the Environmental Protection Department's website, but they are all over the place. Looking at the way the articles are written, there must be someone behind this. Other than Tian Song, there can't be anyone else. Qin Guang slammed the table. He wanted to curse, but he remembered that he was the backbone of Xiaoguang Environmental Protection. He couldn't let his emotions show. It's fine. I took Song Ningyuan's victory. It would be weird if he didn't do something. I'll return to the factory immediately. Continue to drain the mud and get someone to add a sieve to the water outlet. Try not to leak anymore. I've already added a sieve. That's good. 20 minutes later, under the night sky, Qin Guang appeared in the brightly lit and bustling Tangshan Industrial Factory. Although the inspection team had left, the battle for the survival of Tangshan Industrial Factory was not over. Guoming and the other employees didn't feel it was hard. This was the survival of the environmentalists. No matter how leisurely they were, they had to bring out the determination and courage to fight on the battlefield. With a high reward there will be brave men. Qin Guang's 2K bonus had already been paid. The entire Tangshan Industrial Factory was now full of brave men. Xiaolu, the belt machine is overheating. What should we do? Get someone to spray it at him. Don't stop. Don't spray too much. Move the electric fan in my dorm over and blow it. Leader Shin, the melon broke again. Buy a deal. Hurry up and buy it. Remove the dragon gold and 5 elements. I just called them. Buy some asbestos mesh and stainless steel mesh too. One screw pump was burned. There's a smaller one in the warehouse. Change it right away. It must be done in half an hour. Old Ding, is the boss's framing machine ready? Hurry up and do it if you can. One more is one more. Xiaolu, come over here quickly. The valve next to the mud pump exploded. So be it. Wrap it in a plastic bag first. There's no time to change the valve. During the afternoon when Qin Guang was slacking off, Murphy's theorem seemed to have exerted its greatest effect in Tangshan Industrial Factory. When something bad might or might not happen, it often did. Such a high-intensity mud discharge caused many of the problems that had accumulated in the Tangshan Industrial Factory for many years to erupt. One problem followed another. Everyone was as busy as ants on a hot pan. There was no time to breathe at all. Although Qin Guang was now a billionaire, this was the first time he had actually put it into practice on the production line. He had also learned a lot. For these factory employees, this was the battlefield where they risked their lives. This was the home and secure rice bowl that they risked their lives to protect. Qin Guang finally found Guoming at the location of the Haoyang sedimentation pond. At this time, Comrade Guo was also covered in mud, standing on the edge of the pond with his sleeves rolled up. Mr. Qin is here. When old Guo turned around and saw Qin Guang, he exclaimed in joy. The employees in other places heard the voice and also cheered in unison. Qin Guang grinned. Before others found him, the atmosphere in Tongshan Industrial Factory was dull and depressing. But with Guo Ming's shout, the news of his arrival quickly spread throughout the factory. With his perception of the qi of heaven and earth, he clearly felt that the atmosphere above Tongshan Industrial Factory seemed to shake out of thin air and rise a lot. The employees who were working hard suddenly found their backbone. As soon as they saw him, they felt at ease and knew that their efforts would not be in vain. Qin Guang understood that this was called the morale of the army. No wonder so many people liked to do business. This feeling of being entrusted, relied on, and trusted was actually quite good. Go to my office first. I've just collected almost all the information on the internet. Guo Ming passed the ladle to the side, patted the mud on his hands and walked towards Qin Guang. As he was walking, perhaps because he was too tired, his legs gave way and he suddenly slipped. Unexpectedly, his body fell sideways and he fell into the pond. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, Qin Guang couldn't be bothered about shocking the world. He took a deep breath and leaped forth. Tapping his feet on the surface of the sedimentation pond, he traversed over 20 meters and brushed past Guo Ming. At the same time, he also grabbed onto old Guo's collar and dragged him out of the pond. Wow! My God! Mr. Qin, this is, oh my God! The Lord of the Land can fly. Qin Guang patted Guo Ming on the shoulder. Be careful and don't fall in. I'll go to your office first. Inform everyone one by one that safety is the most important. It's a matter of life and death. Even if the factory is lost, nothing will happen. Guo Ming was stunned for a long time. He knew that Qin Guang was good at fighting, but he did not expect that he had upgraded from fighting to crossing the river on a reed. Oh no, it was flying across the sewage pond on the waves. Qin Guang did not have time to explain to the other employees. He waved to them and went to the office building first. As soon as he arrived at Guo Ming's office, Qin Guang turned on the computer. Sure enough, his desktop was full of web links and categories. He even wrote his own public opinion analysis. China News Network, China Environmental Protection Network, Dachuan Online, Tongshan Online, Dachuan Tieba, and other such media and communities were full of real-name reports and analysis articles by Yang Detsai. Many of the articles even led the fire to himself. Celebrity Qin Guang engages in environmental protection, secretly manipulates the bell. Does dosing really meet the standard? Don't be a layman for environmental protection. The almighty brother who has changed. Articles like this were everywhere on the internet. Fortunately, Qin Guang's influence was still there. Since the news came out in the afternoon, none of the mainstream domestic TV media had followed up on it. But even so, with the recent hype of women that brought Qin Guang popularity, Qin Guang's popularity rose several times in just one afternoon, but his reputation had completely declined. To put it bluntly, his reputation was ruined. With Chief Engineer Yang's ability, of course, it was impossible for him to set off such a storm of public opinion in a short period of time. Comrade Li from the review team would also not do such a thing. After all, they had just left and they had just passed the certification, but now they were exposed. The impact on them was no less than the impact on Tongshan Factory. Therefore, Guo Ming's guess was 100% accurate. It must be Tiansong Water Group that was causing trouble. If it was Qin Guang in the past, he would definitely try to find Chief Engineer Yang and teach him a lesson. But now, Qin Guang felt that this was not a good idea. Finding out Yang Ditsai was only treating the symptoms and not the root cause. If it was exposed, then the fact that he was playing with power would be confirmed. Forget it, let's drain the mud first. No matter how much the internet was stirring up, as long as there was no mud from now on, the heat of the matter would slowly die down. Song Ningyuan's heavy fist would hit nothing. You would never have guessed that the old man really had the means to turn everything into mud in an instant. Qin Guang opened the door and saw Guo Ming, who had not had time to change his clothes, walking over. Let's go. Let's drain the mud now. Chapter 1032. Mud removal? Haven't we been doing it? Guo Ming couldn't understand what Qin Guang was trying to say. It wasn't easy for him to pacify the employees who witnessed Qin Guang's godly technique and told them not to add oil to the fire. However, he was actually more curious than anyone else. Before today, Guo Ming had been living in the world of ordinary people and had never thought about the existence of martial artists. So even if he was thinking about reporting Qin Guang, He couldn't hold back his curiosity and wanted to ask Qin Guang about the profundity of his flying technique. But it was obvious that Qin Guang didn't take it seriously at all. He just pulled Guoming and ran to the edge of the pool. Qin Guang smiled. My local god temple. Oh no, my little house hasn't been touched yet, right? Not yet, but a lot of employees suggested putting a statue in it just like you did. I'm a little tempted, but I'm afraid you won't like it, so I haven't agreed yet. Qin Guang, after the founding of the People's Republic, humans are no longer allowed to become spirits. You guys can't be superstitious like this. Guoming, before I met you, I used to believe in science too. I didn't know the light, Sing Shinka. Qin Guang shrugged. I can't explain it to you. Forget it, I'm not going to talk nonsense with you. Wait for an hour, the mud in the mud storage pool will be almost completely hardened. You just need to get people to fish it out. Also, the speed of the dry mud forming at the filter press will increase by at least 10 times. Be prepared. What about the things on the internet? Guoming asked again. Qin Guang shrugged. It doesn't matter, the news just broke out this afternoon. The reporters will probably start coming tomorrow morning or midnight at the earliest. Although the people have a lot of opinions, everything has to be based on evidence. Seeing is believing. It's impossible for Yang Detsai to send us to heaven with just a video. Let's finish removing the mud tonight. Seeing Qin Guang's solemn vow, Guoming wanted to say something else was impossible, but his mind recalled the scene 7 days ago where the mud sank inexplicably, and his face immediately felt a burning pain. Forget it, who cares if it's scientific or not? Anyway, Qin Guang has the final say. If he said it would work, then it would definitely work. If you don't want to be slapped in the face or ridiculed by him, then just believe what he says. She didn't know if she was lucky or unlucky to have such a boss. On the other side, because of Yang Detsai's real name report, Tongshan Industrial Factory, which had just settled down on the internet, quickly became a national hotspot again. In order to take advantage of this hotspot, even many outdoor streamers from the surrounding counties and even Wujing City brought their equipment straight to Tongshan and ran to set up equipment outside the water outlet. The names of these people's live stream rooms were also quite interesting. Outdoor host brings you to expose the shady scenes. Brother Ku, who is not afraid of power, seeks death and decrypts Qin Guang's sewage treatment plant. All kinds of live stream rooms with such titles emerged endlessly on major platforms. It was very lively. Humans die for wealth, birds die for food. Fame is money. Taking advantage of this hot spot to get attention, perhaps you can turn over a new leaf and become the master of the house. Who doesn't want to be rich? Even if Xiao Tsong had already tried to help Qin Guang ban these outdoor streamers from within bamboo, the effect was really terrible. At the same time, there were at least dozens of streamers from every household. Although Bamboo was the leader in the livestream platform, it couldn't control other companies. Because of this, Xiao Tsong had no choice but to ban 3 popular outdoor streamers from his own platform. It could be said that he had shed tears to behead Ma Su. Although Xiao Tsong's heart ached, he didn't regret it. Because he knew that Qin Guang's trust was more important than anything else. At this time he had to support Qin Guang even more. After the incident, even if the loyal Qin Guang casually gave him something in return, today's loss could be made back 10-fold or even 100-fold. Unfortunately, there were too many livestream platforms. Xiao Tsong's goodwill was just a drop in the bucket. It still couldn't stop at least dozens of streamers from all major platforms from broadcasting at the same time. In a sense, since the rise of the livestream industry, this was the first time that such a large number of online streamers participated in an environmental inspection at the same time. This was a sign that the modern media industry had entered the new media era. The media industry, which was mainly based on television stations, was gradually moving towards the more free and flexible self-media. If local television stations wanted to send reporters, or if they wanted to broadcast the interview, they had to consider the policies and requirements of the higher authorities. Especially for this kind of sensitive environmental inspection, you couldn't just publish it as you pleased. You had to consider the direction of public opinion and the strategy of the higher authorities. If you made a public report without permission, it might feel good for a while to take advantage of the hot spot, but it was very likely that your whole family would be cremated. The dispatching and reporting of television stations had to strictly follow the rules and regulations. This caused the efficiency of traditional media to be low. The emerging self-media people, who could be individuals as the main body, had no such concerns at all. A mobile phone, a self-balancing PTZ, a face, a mouth, and an anchor account of a live broadcasting platform. This was their full range of belongings. They carried it and walked. They had super high mobility. They were barefoot and not afraid of wearing shoes. Once they smelled the smell of blood, they could immediately roll up their sleeves like sharks in the sea and swarm up in their cars. Even if it was like in the Bamboo platform, the live account was banned, they could go to other platforms to make a comeback. They could afford to lose, and they understood the truth that the law does not punish the masses. Because of this, at this moment in the national online world, the text reports about Tangshan Industrial Factory were brushing the screen again and again, complementing the live broadcast that was now open everywhere, and the heat of the whole matter continued to rise. Although after the emergency measures in the factory, through the addition of filters and other measures, the new mud leaking from the water outlet has been reduced a lot, but from time to time, 1 or 2 pieces of yellow or black mud will be carried out. In addition, along the direction of the water outlet, along the Tangshan River all the way down, you can always find a lot of mud leaking from morning to afternoon. This was a solid hammer that couldn't be denied, and Xiaoguang Environmental Protection and Tangshan Industrial Factory were roasted on the fire. Expert Li and other members of the review team who had just left were also under great pressure at this time, but they couldn't do anything. If they returned at this time, although they could follow the public opinion, it was not in line with the rules and would offend Qin Guang to death. But if they didn't make a sound at all and just buried their heads in the sand, it would cause the authority of these people to be questioned and become a stain in their career history. Comrade Li sat in the room of the government guest house in Wujing City. He was particularly tormented and extremely embarrassed. When he was first appointed as the review team leader of Tangshan Industrial Factory, he didn't take it seriously at all. This was not the first time he had done this kind of thing. He had always been known as an executioner in the industry. It was precisely because of his authority and rigor that he was in charge of many investigations that were similar to the final judgment being handed down with a hammer. But this time, after Qin Guang got involved in Xiaoguang Environmental Protection, everything was different. Comrade Li didn't want to play favoritism or commit fraud. Even if he was panicking, he had the imperial sword of Old Man Jin. He intended to be like Bao Zheng wielding the dragon head guillotine. Even if you were of the privileged class, I would still behead you. But the final result was that he didn't have any evidence on the scene at all. No matter how sharp the dragon head guillotine was, it still had to be reasonable. In the end, he had no choice but to lead the team and leave dejectedly. But as soon as he left, trouble immediately arose, turning him into a pig looking in the mirror, or a mouse crawling into the bellows. He was in trouble both inside and outside. Old Li was about to cry. Why was his life so bitter? He also knew that it was definitely Tiansong Water playing tricks behind the scenes. If it had been another company, he could have personally pressured the other party to stop. But Tiansong Water was no small matter. Although it couldn't be said that its words carried enormous weight in the industry, it was still a behemoth that couldn't be avoided. Its network was complicated and it couldn't be easily offended. With no other choice, Old Li could only simply turn off his phone. He wouldn't answer anyone's call. I'll be an ostrich today. I don't care about anything. I'll do whatever I want. At worst, I won't take on this kind of hard work in the future. I'll go back to my University of Science and Technology to teach in peace. He couldn't understand what kind of magic Qin Guang had used to prevent him and the others from seeing the slightest bit of mud during the review. At this moment, the most pleased were probably the instigators behind this matter, Chief Engineer Yang Detsai, and Song Ningyuan himself. Yang Detsai happily hid in the Tangshan Hotel. He didn't dare go home. Only Song Ningyuan's people knew that he was hiding here. This morning, when he picked up Song Ningyuan's call, he immediately threw the other party 500,000 yuan in compensation and the promised safety guarantee to the other party, making him feel as if he was on cloud 9. He was depressed that he went for wool and came home shorn. At home, he was still being taken advantage of by his short-sighted wife. In the face of Song Ningyuan's olive branch, he saw the hope of counterattacking and killing Qin Guang. How could he not be happy? Although he was also afraid, the money in his hands was the most practical. He didn't believe that Qin Guang would want his life for this kind of thing. In addition, there were disadvantages to reporting under his real name, but there were also advantages. He put himself in the eye of the storm, and with the protection of Tiansong Water, Yang Detsai didn't think that his life would be in danger. The higher he jumped, the safer he would be. The most dangerous place was the safest place. In this bright world there had to be morality. It was Qin Guang's own hands and feet that were not clean. Although he didn't know what methods he had used, the results showed that he was operating in the dark. He was using his power and status to harm the people of Tangshan City. I, Yang Detsai, am the messenger of justice. I am not afraid of power, I put life and death aside, I represent morality, I stand on the side of reason. Tuan. That's nothing. I have 200,000 yuan in my pocket now. When it's done, I still have 300,000 yuan. I also want you, Qin Guang, to lose all your reputation. You want me to regret it? I'll let you see who's the one regretting it. Yang Ditsai smiled proudly, but accidentally touched the injury at the corner of his mouth, causing him to gasp in pain. He began to curse in his heart again. Mother****, those bastards were really ruthless. Fortunately, he dragged a few more people into the water. It was quite satisfying to let the bastards of the mechanical repair class slap themselves in the face. Today his real name report was a bit of a twist and turn. In the morning, as soon as he went downstairs, the mechanical repair class monitor who had secretly blocked the way rushed up from behind and hit him with a stick. Then he was punched in the face by those bastards. When Yang Ditsai saw that the situation was not good, he quickly threw out the terms that he had negotiated with Song Ningyuan. Then he made a phone call to Song Ningyuan in front of everyone. That was how he managed to avoid being beaten up so badly that he could not get up. Song Ningyuan didn't know that Yang Ditsai had called him while he was being beaten up. He only knew that Yang Ditsai had strengthened his own team in less than 10 minutes. Of course, he was happy to see the anti-Qin Guang team grow stronger. He immediately promised a little more treatment to the others. Although it was far less than Chief Engineer Yang, it was slightly more than the 2N bonus in Tangshan factory. This difference was enough to make the mechanical repair class monitor and the others, who had long lost red eyes, decisively work for him. Yang Ditsai's efficiency also surprised Song Ningyuan. He felt that the former chief engineer of Tangshan factory was a talent like Su Qin and Zhang Yi. He had dealt with 8 people in 10 minutes. What kind of operating ability did he have? Qin Guang was really blind. Didn't he know what was the most important thing in the 21st century? Talent, of course. As a result, in the morning Yang Ditsai and the others secretly went to the water outlet of Tangshan factory. As spies, Yang Ditsai, who understood technology and policy, naturally knew how to take photos of the evidence to make the effect of the best. An hour later, the few of them combined the videos they had taken and sent them to Song Ningyuan. As soon as Song Ningyuan received the materials, he immediately got the public relations department of Tiansong Water to start working. As the industry leader, Tiansong Water was very familiar with whether it was bleaching their own company or discrediting other companies. That was why they could ferment the matter to this point in just one afternoon. Song Ningyuan stood in front of the office window and looked at the sky outside. His eyes were focused on the south side of Tangshan City, and his mood had never been better. After being slapped in the face by Qin Guang countless times, Song Ningyuan could not help but feel aggrieved. Fortunately, he had finally seized the opportunity to counterattack. Let's see how you're going to deal with this. After all this trouble, you still want Xia Guang to continue operating Tangshan factory? Dream on. I'm going to send you to jail. Even if you don't go to jail, I'm going to ruin your reputation. Qin Guang, now you know how powerful it is, don't you? Environmental protection isn't like your previous variety shows or movies. The waters here are deeper than you think. You're too naive. Brothers, see, I'm right? Qin Guang can become famous because of his fame. It's all because of his own hype online. Let's give him a taste of his own medicine and take drastic measures. He really can't do anything about it. Behind Song Ningyuan, a young man in a suit said with a smile. Song Ningyuan turned back and patted this young man on the shoulder. Heezy, this idea of yours is indeed not bad. I'll praise you properly in front of your dad and mine later. Zheng He grinned. Then I'll have to thank you, cousin. This young man was precisely Zheng He, whom Qin Guang had not interacted with for a long time. Zheng He, the only son of the chairman of the New Radiance Corporation, Zheng Yunhao, was precisely the cousin of Song Ningyuan, the son of the chairman of the Tiansong Water Company, Song Qinxiu. Zheng He's mother, Song Qinqin, was precisely Song Qinxiu's younger sister. The reason why the Tiansong Water Company had been able to develop so well throughout the country these past few years was inextricably linked to the help and support of the leading livestock producer, the New Radiance Corporation. All of them were enterprises that had prospered in Great Chuan Province, and thus had quite a number of relations with each other. Just like Lu's chemical industry and Huangxiang Corporation, it was also because the founders of these two large corporations had grown up together as brothers, that the younger generation Lu Fei and Zhong Bai were on good terms with each other. As for Zheng He, because of Wenwen's disappearance and Qin Guang's meteoric rise in school, he had long lost the thought of going against Qin Guang. But recently, Wenwen had returned to school again, and Zheng He's thoughts had been rekindled. However, Wenwen was even more indifferent and impatient to him than before. Of course, Zheng He would vent his anger on Qin Guang, but he had never had a good opportunity to discuss Qin Guang, nor could he play the childish game of finding people to beat up Qin Guang like he used to. Just as he was worrying about what to do, he happened to hear Song Ningyuan gnashing his teeth and talking about Qin Guang during the family gathering. The two cousins who shared a common hatred for the enemy, immediately hit it off and came up with this plan to take drastic measures against Qin Guang. Now that the plan had succeeded and the general trend had been set, Qin Guang would definitely be badly battered by now. How could the two brothers suppress their complacent mood? However, at this moment, what they did not expect was that Qin Guang had returned to the Earth Temple and hung the heavenly Holy Grail on the water inlet. Following Qin Guang's order, pieces of hardened mud that looked like the bucket of a washing machine were rapidly falling off the belt filter press. In addition, there were even more pieces of mud that were clearly as hard as bricks and would sink no matter how one looked at it. They inexplicably defied gravity and floated on the large ponds, especially the stabilizing ponds in front of the water outlet. The workers in the factory were too lazy to even use ladles for dung. Instead, they used fishing nets and sacks. They threw them into the water and pulled them up. Hard mud bricks were pulled up. At first, they had to use tanker trucks to transport the mud. Now it was different. Container trucks, tricycles and so on came. They filled up the trucks and pulled them away, exploding the earthen god with soy sauce. He was just that rude and unreasonable. You're talking to me about mud? Sorry, I only have bricks here. I don't have mud. The first to realize that something was wrong were the online anchors outside. They were having a good time ridiculing, saying that for the sake of justice for the people, they double-clicked 666, followed, and sent a wave of gifts. In the end, as they clapped, the mud in the water outlet disappeared. The water became clear and translucent under everyone's gaze. On the other side, all kinds of vehicles filed in and out of the Tangshan industrial factory. It was in full swing. Here they were facing the pitch-black night, blowing the cold autumn wind. Their hearts were burning. They thought about the outdoor anchors who had finally gotten hot, but their hearts quickly became ice-cold. What happened to the real name report? What happened to the breaking news? The video you guys posted on the internet was so shocking. You even said that you would have to crazily queue for at least a few days. But now, everything was gone. You guys messed with us. Chapter 1033. The group of online anchors couldn't help but grit their teeth. They wouldn't get up early if there was no profit. They spared no effort to drive here, braving the cold wind and the dark night, holding a flashlight, not afraid of hardship or tiredness. Wasn't it for a meteoric rise? But now he didn't even get a single thing. He worked so hard, but all his efforts were in vain. How could they not be angry? How could they not be shocked? How could they not be angry? The people in the factory didn't care how shocked the people outside were. The mud suddenly became easy to fish, so they didn't need so much manpower, and the temporary workers in the factory lost their jobs. The drivers who only cared about hauling the mud didn't know how powerful it was. They just waited under the pool for the bricks to be thrown down from above. The ones who really knew how powerful it was were the employees standing by the pool in Guoming. However, humans were such unique creatures. As the saying goes, frogs are boiled in warm water. These employees had seen too many incredible things in the past few days, so they were particularly calm about the floating bricks, as if they were meant to be floating. Guoming walked around the factory the whole time, doing a good job of safety management according to Qin Guang's requirements. He only looked at Qin Guang in the Temple of the Earth, from time to time, thinking to himself that he really had to look at him in a different light. Guoming always knew that Qin Guang wasn't an ordinary person, but he really didn't expect him to become such an incredible person. Although Qin Guang didn't give him any explanation, Guoming could think with his toes that the floating mud in the factory was definitely Qin Guang's doing. Did he really become an immortal? Forget it, that wasn't important. What was important was that he had the ability to do what he said, and that was enough. This meant that there was absolutely no need to be afraid of working with him. Xia Guang Environmental Protection was in such a desperate situation, and Tangshan Industrial's coffin was almost covered with soil, but he could pull it back. It seemed that he wasn't joking, nor was he playing house. He really wasn't playing around. He really wanted to pull Xia Guang Environmental Protection and Tangshan Industrial back on the right track. He used his incredible ability. Looking at Qin Guang from afar, Guoming felt the blood in his heart gradually surge to the top of his head. Although I don't know what other trump cards you have, no matter what, I will fight with you to the end. Just like how we overturned Su Lijing together, this time we will make the impossible possible, and revive Xiaoguang Environmental Protection and Tongshan Industrial Factory. Is this guy trying to scare us on purpose? Hua Ling, who was supposed to be asleep in the dormitory, unknowingly stood beside Guoming. Zhongyu stretched lazily. I really thought I was done for in the afternoon, but he saved me. Hua Ling snorted. You made me nervous for nothing. I even called Teacher Zhua specifically because of the mud discharge. How's Xiao Zhua doing overseas recently? Guoming asked curiously. Hua Ling shrugged. What else can he do? He's just a researcher in the laboratory. But Teacher Zhua is amazing and knowledgeable. Even if he's a researcher in a world-renowned laboratory, he won't be buried. He's already a small leader of a project team now. Guoming nodded, then looked in Qin Guang's direction. It's quite a pity. I thought Xiao Zhua and Qin Guang would end up together. They were so affectionate back then, I was interested. Tisk Teacher Gua, you're starting to gossip? Hua Ling teased. Zhongyu also said strangely, actually I think so too. Hua Ling interrupted the others. Who can say for sure when it comes to relationships? Besides, when have you seen Qin Guang and Teacher Zhua break up? It's just that one of them is in China and the other is in America. They're thousands of miles apart and out of reach. At most they can only chat online. Zhongyu felt that there was something wrong with Hua Ling's words. After a while she reacted. Hey, you're really shameless. Out of reach. Hua Ling laughed. You don't understand, do you? If they didn't have an affair, would Qin Guang have confessed to Teacher Zhua at the press conference? Also, you don't know, but Qin Guang bought a Mercedes-Benz for Teacher Zhua. Teacher Zhua isn't a vain person. If she didn't completely treat Qin Guang as one of her own, would she have accepted his car? Zhongyu was shocked. Really? Teacher Zhua's Mercedes-Benz E400 was bought by Qin Guang for her? Guoming also had a face full of gossip. He pricked up his ears to listen. Hua Ling couldn't keep her mouth shut. Uh-huh? What else? Where do you think Teacher Zhua got the money to buy such an expensive car? Also, the money Teacher Zhua used to go abroad was... Cough cough. Qin Guang's cough came from afar, but only Hua Ling heard it. It sounded like thunder in her ears, startling Hua Ling, a big sister from the northeast. She hurriedly looked in Qin Guang's direction anxiously. She knew that he was unhappy that she had said too much. She timidly hid her face. I won't say any more. I'm really tired. I'm going back to the dorm to sleep. Turning around, Hua Ling was still feeling indignant for Zhuo Jingxi. She secretly cursed Qin Guang for being so heartless. He only knew how to flirt with other women all day long. He didn't even care about Teacher Zhua, who was far away in the United States. She knew that in the past 6 months, although Qin Guang would contact Zhuo Jingxi from time to time, he had never thought of going to the United States to visit her. Although Teacher Zhua never complained about these things on the phone, it was hard to hide his loneliness. Hua Ling thought to herself, Teacher Zhua has a good temper. If it were me, if my boyfriend in China treated me like this, I would have jumped up and become hostile. In fact, Qin Guang was also thinking about what Hua Ling said. He also knew that he might have done something wrong, but in the past 6 months he had been living like he was in a war every day. It wasn't that he didn't miss Zhuo Jingxi, and it wasn't that he didn't want to see her, but it was really hard for him to get away. Just like this time, if Teacher Zhuo was by his side, it might have been a lot easier. Although she was only a PhD student on the surface, she was also the last disciple of Professor Xu Lirong. Especially in the past 6 months, she had published many papers in foreign SCI journals and had become a hot international expert in the field of photocatalysis. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to snatch the throne of laboratory director in the extremely competitive foreign laboratories. Teacher Zhua's knowledge couldn't be faked. Unfortunately, they were in different corners of the world. The world was too big. It was not easy to move and travel. Forget it, he didn't want to think about things that couldn't put out a nearby fire. Qin Guang gathered his thoughts and continued to release the earth elemental ability of the earth sauce exploder, forcibly compressing the sludge. At this time, the concentration of earth elemental power around his body was maintained at 0.1 units for a long time. Qin Guang even felt that after these days of crazy tossing, even after a period of time, the earth elemental power around the world wouldn't be able to easily return to its previous concentration. This was the effect he wanted. Later, when he was happy, he would crazily absorb it again so that the world would forever lack earth, and he would be the only Earth Emperor. Time passed little by little, and when the sky turned white again, the cheers of success finally came from the Tongshan Industrial Factory, which had been working hard for nearly 24 hours. The workers excitedly threw their hats straight into the sky, and an unprecedented sense of accomplishment enveloped everyone's hearts. Success. They finally succeeded. After pulling out a total of 100 trucks, the sludge that had accumulated in the Tangshan industrial factory for many years was completely cleared. With the current concentration of pollutants in the pool, even if there was no effect at all, it wouldn't easily exceed the limit without a month of accumulation. Guoming, who hadn't slept all night, immediately gathered everyone together and Qin Guang gave a speech. Qin Guang waved his hand again, and everyone was given 2 months' salary and bonus. Then only a few people who had a good rest last night were left on duty, and the rest were all on leave. The outdoor anchors outside the factory had been tortured for a whole night, and now more than half of them had left. Those who were left behind saw the people in the factory cheering and jumping back home, and finally resigned themselves to their fate. Well, this time was really unlucky and they completely missed out. After standing guard for a whole night, they didn't even get a ready-made fart, let alone mud. The previous real name reporting materials were no longer fresh. Even if there was some evidence left along the Tangshan River, it wasn't enough to bring down Xiaoguang environmental protection, and it couldn't even resonate with the public. It was still the same thing: evidence. Evidence. Everything needed evidence. Someone else's factory occasionally made a mistake and some sludge came out, but that wasn't a big deal and they just had to pay a fine. They didn't do it uncontrollably, and it was just a normal production accident, and it wouldn't cause irreparable consequences. Without fresh and hot video footage, there was no way to prove that they were continuously discharging sludge. Then the hot news you posted online would become rootless duckweed, without any evidence. Now that they were all on leave, there was no need to look inside and there was definitely nothing left. Qin Guang and Guoming stood together at the entrance of the factory, looking meaningfully at the last 7 or 8 outdoor anchors who had packed up and left, their eyes flashing with a cold light. Sorry you wanted to eat my meat but you only got to smell my fart. I don't have any other skills but I'm especially good at settling scores. Qin Guang gritted his teeth and said to Guoming, we didn't even get a good night's sleep, we can't just let this go. What are you going to do? Qin Guang thought about it. I'll find someone to settle scores first and take care of all these people who followed the show. Song Ningyuan messed with me with public opinion, and I'll use the public opinion he wants to achieve our goal. What do you mean? We took the blame and now we've successfully cleared our names. Doesn't that prove Xia Guang's environmental protection ability? Since we have the ability to meet the standards, then we have to properly discuss the operating period of Tangshan Industrial Factory. Guoming's face lit up. Qin Guang's words made sense. Qin Guang said again, of course these are all minor details, our top priority is to think of a way. I'll try one last time to see if I can improve the process, and if it really doesn't work we'll immediately start the reconstruction plan. Guoming nodded heavily, you'll still have to spend money on this. Qin Guang waved his hand indifferently, it doesn't matter if I spend money or not, since I'm involved in this of course I'll do it as low as possible. Because the Tangshan Industrial Factory incident ruined my reputation, I have to climb back up from where I fell, I have to prove myself again here. Didn't others say I was corrupted? Didn't they say I didn't care about the lives of the common people now that I've become part of the privileged class? Then I'll burn my money to do something, and let them see how I care about the lives of the common people. I'll definitely make up for the mistakes that Xia Guang has made all these years. How can I let Song Ningyuan do something that can earn me money, my reputation, and my merit? I just want to know those people who scolded me so hard yesterday, do their faces hurt? Not only will I make their faces hurt, I'll make their flesh hurt too. Qin Guang's thinking was simple, if a tiger doesn't show his power, people will really think he's a sick cat. Ever since he dealt with Zhuo Wei and settled accounts with the media that had slandered him, Qin Guang hadn't waved his butcher knife for a long time. So many media people and marketing accounts forgot the pain after the scars healed, or perhaps others felt that he was different from the past, that he had changed from barefooted to wearing shoes, and was no longer as violent as before, paying more attention to the public's influence in his words and actions, so he wouldn't appear to be so vengeful. Others might be tired and want to sleep but Qin Guang could bear it. After letting Guoming go to sleep, Qin Guang sat in his own office in the office building, making phone calls one after another. At the headquarters of Qingguang Corporation, especially the public relations and publicity department headed by Lu Xiaoyang, were bored to death recently. Although the publicity department of Qingguang Corporation was responsible for the movie Women and other promotions of Qingguang's solo piano album, this amount of work wasn't even enough to fill the gaps between the teeth of the industry elite, Comrade Xiao Lu. Although he had turned over a new leaf, Comrade Xiao Lu was once an industry elite that was highly regarded by China's #1 paparazzi, Zhuo Wei. What Lu Xiaoyang was really good at was this kind of offensive or defensive game of public opinion. It was really a waste of his talent to let him do the same thing as others, doing online publicity step by step. With Chen Guang's call, it was a chance for him to show off his abilities. In less than half a day, all the major media outlets that followed the trend of slandering Chen Guang online yesterday, regardless of whether they were media outlets or official media outlets, were all served with lawyers' letters. The outdoor anchors who were the most active last night were even worse off, as the lawyers' letters were sent to their respective platforms. Although the anchors were only independent individuals, the live broadcasting companies that provided them with platforms couldn't just run away. Once the lawyers' letters arrived, these platform companies finally remembered the various misdeeds of Chen Guang in the past, and without a doubt, they immediately sacrificed themselves to save the king. If it was just sacrificing themselves to save the king, it wouldn't be a big deal. If one company failed, they could just move to another. However, Qingguang Corporation's lawyers' letters were sent to the masses. Other than Bamboo Live, who took the initiative to wave the butcher's knife, all the major platforms in the industry more or less had a hand in it last night. Everyone who saw the lawyer's letter had a share, and no one could escape. The end result was that these outdoor anchors, who had more or less gained some popularity, encountered a situation where they were banned from all the platforms overnight. They had suddenly become vagrants with nowhere to go. Their dreams and lives suddenly had nowhere to put them. Although there were many small and medium-sized platforms that they could choose from, they were all paradise for pornographic broadcasting, and there was no place for them to stand. The nightmare came so suddenly and violently that these anchors, who had worked hard all night without any results, were not mentally prepared. While they were still in their dreams, they suddenly received a call from the original platform's management. The termination notice came so suddenly, like a thunderbolt. Even if they had thousands of regrets in their hearts and should not have braced themselves to rub off on the hot topic so easily, it seemed that it was still a little too late. At the same time, many of the media outlets that had received favors from the Tiansong Water Group changed their target, and switched to publishing news articles on Qingguang's side. In fact, the media people were such fence-sitters. Whoever had milk was their mother, and they would speak up for whoever had the bigger fist. According to Qingguang's own style of doing things, he was afraid that he would really let these media outlets go to court. However, in the end he still listened to Lu Xiaoyang's advice. No matter how big or hard one's fist was, they still had to leave something for others to eat. As the saying goes, pen and knife is black and white is white. If you really made the relationship so stiff, others could just change to a new platform or account and change their ways to slander you. You wouldn't be able to do anything about it. The lawyer's letter looked intimidating, but in essence, it was just a greeting. As for those unlucky outdoor anchors, Qingguang had no intention of letting them go. It was not that he bullied the weak and was afraid of the strong, but that other media people only made groundless accusations on the internet. The harm and threat to him were far less than the anchors who directly went to the Tongshan factory's water outlet. If he hadn't acted quickly and used his special ability to get rid of all the mud in time, the consequences would have been unimaginable if these anchors had broadcast the mud in front of the national audience. If he really gave these people a real hammer, the reputation that Qingguang had worked hard to accumulate for a long time was very likely to be pulled down to the bottom. Environmental protection was not entertainment. It was a matter of life and death. It was a pain point that ordinary people absolutely could not touch. Xiaoguang Environmental Protection and Tongshan Industrial Factory were at fault, but the root cause was the incompetent boss Xia's fault. Qingguang was just an unlucky scapegoat who accidentally got involved. He added medicine with the intention of getting away with it, but his method would not bring more harm to Tongshan City. As long as the mud could be disposed of in time, it was in line with the nature of environmental protection, turning the soluble pollutants in the water body into solid waste that was easier to dispose of. Whether it was a white cat or a black cat, it was a good cat if it could catch mice. Biochemical treatment was the treatment of pollutants. Chemical treatment combined with physical treatment was also a way to remove pollutants. If Qingguang was willing to invest this capital, even if he only added medicine from now on, as long as the water could meet the standards, as long as he could find a unit to receive the sludge, it could not be said that Tongshan Industrial Factory's operation did not meet the standards. Therefore, what Qingguang did this time seemed not so good on the surface, but in a sense, it was reasonable and compliant. As boss Xia's scapegoat, he also had a hard life. After all, it was 170 million yuan in cash. There was no reason to give it away just like that. No one's money came from the wind, and Qingguang's efforts to protect himself were reasonable. But in the eyes of the ordinary people who didn't understand the profession, the truth was unforgivable. The people just felt that if you added medicine you were in the wrong and couldn't be reasoned with. Therefore, even if the matter had been exposed, Qin Guang definitely couldn't admit it. Today he wanted to use Song Ningyuan's method to counter him. Didn't you say that Xia Guang Environmental Protection was incompetent? Didn't you say that Xia Guang Environmental Protection could only add medicine to get away with it? Then the problem is, where is the evidence that I added medicine? Where's my mud? You shot a video of more than 10 minutes and said that I added medicine randomly? Who knows if you've added a special skill? If what you said is true, then where's your new evidence? It's just a video of a real name report and embellished text speculation. It's not enough. So, since we've been the scapegoat for the past 2 days, we have to have a good talk. Qin Guang had to take a stand and show a stronger attitude to continue managing Xia Guang Environmental Protection. At the same time, he had to take this opportunity to clear Xia Guang Environmental Protection's name and regain the public's confidence in Xia Guang Environmental Protection's management of Tangshan Industrial Plant. Regardless of how the negotiations would develop in the future, it was time to take a stand. However, media relations were also a field of study, and everyone had their own specialties. Qin Guang didn't have the time to ask and manage everything. Fortunately, Lu Xiaoyang was especially good at this. Qin Guang only needed to set a tone, and Lu Xiaoyang would be the one to plan the specific content of the press release. That afternoon, Lu Xiaoyang's meticulously prepared press release counterattacked, engulfing all the major media outlets. With a momentum even fiercer than Song Ningyuan's yesterday, it swept through the online world in an instant. Yesterday, the public was still scolding Qin Guang, but after seeing the new reports, especially after Qin Guang arranged for the pools to be auctioned and sold on the spot, the situation suddenly reversed. No matter how the people Song Ningyuan found talked about it on the internet, it was not as good as a video compilation, and they even gave you a sign saying what time it was. What are you slandering? Isn't the operation of the pool fine? The public opinion on the internet quickly turned into the following. We were wrong. We shouldn't have questioned Brother Quan Quan. He's a good person. We were used. We were so easily incited. We've lost our minds. We're retarded. We owe Brother Quan Quan a movie ticket. If you also feel ashamed, you can pre-order a ticket for heroin. That's right, we have no other way to compensate him. He can only return him a movie ticket. When Qin Guang woke up in the evening, he didn't realize that the public opinion had become that everyone owed Brother Quan Quan a movie ticket. He was also shocked. Obviously, he cared more about the reputation of Tangshan Industrial Factory. Why did these brothers want to return his movie ticket? Forget it. Anyway, it's my benefit. Don't care about it. It's always good to have money in my pocket. Even Mr. Li, who had been guarding the 5 capitals, was dumbfounded. He never expected that Qin Guang would be able to turn things around so easily and take the initiative. There were more and more things he couldn't figure out. Yes, Qin Guang must have added drugs. Then why didn't the sludge surface when he and others reviewed it? Why did it come up as soon as he and others left? Why was it that as soon as the news came out on the internet, his mud immediately disappeared into thin air? I may have reviewed a fake sewage treatment plant. Forget it. In short, this is definitely a good thing for me. Old Li's reputation has been preserved. As for the 2 brothers, Song Ningyuan and Zheng He, they were both dumbfounded. They were all dumbfounded in the office. Chapter 1034. Once again he averted the danger. No, he took advantage of the attention caused by the public opinion storm to take the opportunity to throw out a more resolute attitude. I have been counterattacked by him. Although policies have to pay attention to laws and regulations, they have to consider public opinion, especially the environmental protection industry, which is closely related to the national economy and the people's livelihood. Whether an environmental protection company can continue to survive steadily has a great relationship with the company's reputation. Yesterday's storm of public opinion did not cause any harm and trouble to Qin Guang and his Xia Guang Environmental Protection. Instead, it became a boost for him. The conscience of a private entrepreneur? Why did Qin Guang take the risk to set foot in the environmental protection industry? Environmental protection rules the world. Stars do environmental protection, easy money and difficult money. Qin Guang interview. Why did I apply for environmental science as an undergraduate? From a scapegoat to a reversal of the situation, what does Qin Guang want? There is no magic in environmental protection. Reaching the standard is justice. Why can Xiaoguang environmental protection come back from the dead? Different professions are different mountains, but the omnipotent Superman can cross the mountains, saving Xiaoguang environmental protection. Such positive press releases appeared in the media and were sent to Song Ningyuan by the Public Relations Department of Tiansong Water Group. It was like a fierce slap in his face. What made Song Ningyuan feel most flustered was the very strong will and attitude expressed between the lines by Chen Guang through these press releases. Unlike before when he accidentally became the receiver, now that the matter had become big, he had also escorted Xiaoguang environmental protection to pass the review. His position was corrected and his attitude was clearer. He wanted to loudly tell everyone that he, Chen Guang, was here, and he was determined to take care of this matter. Previously, there had still been people who had taken him interfering in the Xiaoguang Environmental Protection Agency as a joke. Those of higher levels had thought that he was just playing around, just having a moment of playfulness and not taking it seriously, thinking that they could use other methods to make up for it to make him feel satisfied. But now Chen Guang's attitude was even clearer. I think I can manage Xiaoguang environmental protection well, and I think I can prove that I can make Tangshan Industrial Factory meet the standards. Chen Guang was no longer the hot-headed Tsing University student who could be easily bullied by others. He had already proven his worth and status, and he was inextricably linked to China's top officials. Therefore his attitude was extremely important. Whether it was to the ordinary people or to the higher-ups of Wuxia, it was the same. Now his grip was getting tighter and tighter. Song Ningyuan knew that it would be more and more difficult for him to let go, and the price he would have to pay would be greater and greater. Perhaps he could really loosen the hearts of some of the higher-ups and turn them to support what he did in Tangshan City. Song Ningyuan frowned deeply. He had no choice but to put away his contempt and ridicule and face this matter with a more cautious attitude. Damn it, he seized the opportunity to turn the tables. If it goes on like this, you might really end up empty-handed. Zheng he had originally wanted to see Chen Guang make a fool of himself today, but he didn't expect to see Song Ningyuan, who was in a terrible fix. He rushed to Song Ningyuan's computer to see the situation, and then he also understood the situation and shouted in shock. Song Ningyuan waved his hand, feeling a headache coming on. Alright Heezy, don't worry about this. Go back to your school. Song Ningyuan wasn't too happy that his cousin had seen a joke. We can't just let it go like this. Although Zheng he was still studying, he had been more or less involved in the company's business. He knew that Tangshan Industrial Factory was the key layout of Tiansong Water Group, and it was the benchmark project for Chinsong's expansion from civil urban wastewater treatment to industrial wastewater treatment. If this matter was messed up, Song Ningyuan would suffer a great loss. Even if it was a family business, he would not be able to avoid blame, and at the same time, other shareholders would question his ability. There was even the possibility that Song Ningyuan's position in the company would be shaken. From urban wastewater treatment to industrial projects was a big expansion direction, representing the total investment direction of Tiansong Water Group in the next few years or even a decade. Currently, Song Ningyuan was relying on his father, Song Qinxiu, to hold onto the key to this new direction. However, if things were not handled well, it was possible that his power would be transferred to other professional managers to run the business. Song Ningyuan nodded. Of course I know. Of course I can't let it go. After saying that, Song Ningyuan got up and called his secretary to make arrangements. He finally planned to go to Tangshan personally. Since he had been beaten black and blue by Chen Guang and had no strength to fight back, he might as well try to fight him head-on. He had to make him retreat. Chen Guang, didn't you also express your determination? Similarly, I'll show you my determination to get Tangshan Industrial Factory. I have to make you understand that this piece of meat isn't that delicious. There are bones in it. Even if you swallow it, it will get stuck in your throat. I have to make you think clearly. Your best choice is to take my compensation and leave, then cut your losses. Are you kidding? Tangshan Industrial Factory didn't meet the standards for 8 years. Do you really think it's that simple? I know you can get the Lu Group's water company to work with, but so what? The situation of Tangshan Industrial Plant is very special, and the wastewater treatment is very difficult. If anyone can rebuild it and run it up to the standard, there is no reason for our Tiansong Water Group to stand out among several competing units. We are gods invited by the local government of Tangshan City. What does Tiansong Water Group rely on? It's the huge technical consultant team standing behind us. We have the technical ability to lead the country and even the world. Even if you invest hundreds of millions to complete the reconstruction, you don't have the diamond to do this porcelain work, you still can't meet the standards. Of course, Song Ningyuan was not relying on rootless duckweed. This was also the real reason why he was still confident in snatching food from the tiger's mouth. On the other side, the local government of Tangshan City also experienced a torturous day, but fortunately, it landed smoothly again. If it wasn't for the fact that they were still afraid and Qin Guang didn't have an appointment, the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth leaders of Tangshan City would probably take the initiative to discuss the next step with Chen Guang. Do you want to rebuild it or what? Please give me a straightforward answer. Although adding medicine is good, it's not a long-term solution. We still have to rebuild it. Chen Guang wasn't in a hurry to continue expressing his position. His words had already spread, and old Master Jin didn't call to make things difficult for him. This was good news. It meant that the old master's attitude toward him had changed. Later, Chen Guang thought about it and felt that the review team had inexplicably extended to 7 consecutive days of trial. The random sampling method was a little too crazy and targeted. It wasn't hard to guess that the old master might have secretly made things difficult for him. At that time, old Master Jin's attitude was very clear. He felt that there was no need for him to get involved in this muddy water. He wanted to make Xia Guang environmental protection fail and then compensate him from other places. However, Qin Guang couldn't blame anyone. After all, they had good intentions and guaranteed that it was worth hundreds of millions. The old master just didn't understand his determination and didn't want him to get into trouble because of this matter. In this regard, Qin Guang was also quite embarrassed. In everyone's eyes, his best choice was, of course, to let go. He could extort at least tens of millions from Tiansong Water Group and then go to the old master to complain. Last time, when he resigned from his position as the director, the old master made the Shanghai Financial Group take the blame and gave him $1 billion. This time he lost the sewage treatment plant. Even if it wasn't $1 billion, it was easy to cash out 200 to 300 million. Moreover, a few days ago he got a huge bargain. He took away Jin Shirue and Jiang Yage's management company for $1. If it was someone else who received this treatment, they would probably look in the mirror and think carefully about whether they were the son of destiny. Qin Guang was too embarrassed to tell the truth to old Master Jin. He didn't let go because he felt uncomfortable. He wanted to save face and suffer. He didn't like Song Ningyuan. Even if he had to spend money, he didn't want Song Ningyuan to take advantage of him. It sounded noble, but it was actually that simple. It was such a great dream. Maybe it was a little, but more than that, it was an obsession in his heart that he couldn't tell others. Qin Guang wasn't a standard businessman. He couldn't weigh the pros and cons like ordinary businessmen. Unlike businessmen who haggled over every penny, he cared more about his own feelings. However, he couldn't say this out loud. Otherwise, he would become a laughingstock, especially the group of old masters in Yanjing. When he resigned from his position as the director of the Guangdong General Administration, Qin Guang had already explained it to the old masters in the meeting. Whether it was in the business world or the government, the logic was the same. That's your world and I can't be someone like you. It was rare for Qin Guang to have some free time, and he could finally have a good night's rest in the hotel. The next day he woke up early and went straight to the factory. When he arrived at the factory, he saw Guoming and a few other workers moving things into his temple. "What are you guys moving?" he asked as he walked closer. Seeing this, Guoming quickly moved sideways to block his line of sight. Qin Guang pushed Guoming away. "Stop blocking. Are you going to block here forever?" "Fine." He finally saw what it was. He wondered where these people got this plaster statue. That's right. It was a standard plaster statue of the Lord of the Earth. It was just that this local god's face looked slightly familiar, and there was a 70 to 80% resemblance to his own facial features. However, there was a beard underneath and he looked like a middle-aged version of himself. "Old Gua, I suddenly feel that Tianguang Corporation is still lacking a guard. You can't spend the factory's money like this. It's only been a day and you guys have to spend at least a few thousand to make this." Guoming chuckled. "Mr. Qin, you're thinking too much. This was made by our employees. We didn't use the company's money. Also, we only spent the cost price. It was made by Xiao Fang's father from the production department. You probably don't know this, but Xiao Fang's father is famous in the city for making plaster statues. He's especially good at making land statues like the god of wealth. He's an experienced craftsman." "I know that guy." Qin Guang remembered. Xiao Fang was the guy who first called him the Lord of the Earth yesterday. Guoming saw that Qin Guang didn't seem to be angry, so he asked the others to carefully move the plaster statue inside. He said, "Actually, we didn't mean anything by putting it here. Isn't it auspicious? Anyway, the house has already been built. There's no use for it. It's weird to leave it empty." Qin Guang snorted. I understand that, but why does it look like me? I think Xiao Fang might want to guard the door too. Mr. Qin? I'm innocent. This is a coincidence. It's definitely a coincidence. As he spoke, Xiao Fang, who was especially superstitious yesterday, suddenly appeared from the side. Qin Guang put on a straight face, looking like he wanted to strangle someone to death. He deliberately scared this troublemaker. Then why don't you give me a reasonable explanation? Tell me, did you place my photo in front of your father and make him copy it? Xiao Fang waved his hands. No, I really didn't. But this does have something to do with you, Mr. Qin. Qin Guang raised his hands. You're 3 sentences away from our Tongshan factory's main door. When I went home last night, I told my father that I needed a lord of the earth, but I didn't say that I was in a hurry, nor did I say what kind of person I wanted. Later he dragged me to drink. I drank a little too much and went straight to sleep. In the end, when I woke up this morning, I saw this statue in my yard. At that time, I saw that it looked like you, Mr. Qin, and I was so scared that I almost cried. I asked my father how he got it like this. He said that he was watching the highlights of the Guinness World Fair, and at the same time, he used a mold that he had made before to sculpt the face of a master sculptor who was especially good at it. He said that the master was terrifying. He could carve flowers on the tip of a pencil with a small knife. He was the idol of people like him. He was a god. Then I quickly looked at the plate. Isn't that you, Mr. Qin? Qin Guang, fine, he remembered this incident. Wasn't it what happened when he participated in the Guinness World Fair and pretended to sharpen pencils? Xiao Fang said it in a very convincing manner. Qin Guang could tell from his expression that he was telling the truth. He really wasn't messing with him on purpose. I hesitated for a long time whether I should move this plaster statue over. It would be a pity if I just threw it away. My father really liked the mold that he carved while drunk yesterday. My father said that this was the best portrait he had carved in the past 10 years. Look, Mr. Qin, these eyebrows, these bright and spirited eyes, this handsome nose bridge. It's called a plaster statue, but it's actually a work of art. When I get back, I'll get my father to add a layer of anti-corrosive varnish. It can be preserved for decades or even centuries. This is comparable to the statue of Guandi in the famous Guandi Temple in Tongshan City. The more Xiao Fang spoke, the more excited he became. Mr. Qin, let me say something rebellious. The gods in the heavens believe in it, and if they don't, they won't. We villagers pay attention to this. If Tongshan Factory can operate stably under the protection of this statue, then wouldn't this statue ensure the safety of Tongshan City? This is the true lord of the land. In a few years, when our Tongshan Factory does well, people will remember our good deeds and come here to worship this handsome statue of the land. Although this statue looks similar to you, Mr. Qin, once it stands here, it won't just be your problem. This place, our factory, is the dragon vein of Tongshan City. The statue of the land suppresses the dragon vein here, so it can't be touched. Most importantly, this statue of the land is really handsome, right? Qin Guang immediately retreated in defeat. Handsome, it's indeed handsome. What you said makes sense. How about this, I'll go take a stroll in the laboratory first. He was practically running away in panic. As Xiao Fang spoke, his face glowed with incomparable sincerity, as if moving the statue of the land would cause the entire Tongshan city to shake. After walking far away, he turned back to look. The statue of the land had completely placed Qin Guang's face in. Xiao Fang took out 3 incense sticks from nowhere. Guoming was at the side taking out a lighter to light the incense for him. A few seconds later, those bastards actually knelt down in unison. Qin Guang had goosebumps all over his body. Forget it, forget it. Out of sight, out of mind. Yo, what a rare guest. You finally remembered to come to our laboratory to pay your respects to the researchers. The moment Qin Guang pushed open the laboratory door, Hualing, who was holding a test tube to pour the medicine, squinted her eyes and teased him when she saw him. Zhongyu was fiddling with the water bath pot. It looked like she was preparing to test the total phosphorus. Qin Guang randomly found a chair and sat down. Senior Hualing, look at what you're saying. Haven't I been tormented enough for the past few days? Hualing chuckled. Who cares? Just sit there like a statue of a god. I feel like you're about to become an immortal. Qin Guang flipped open the experiment notebook on the desk next to him and casually flipped through it. If I really become an immortal, I'll give Senior Hualing a spot to follow me to the heavens. Zhongyu covered her mouth and laughed. Hualing rolled her eyes. Who wants to follow you to the heavens? There are only old immortals in the heavens. There are no handsome young men. You should just take Teacher Zhuo to the heavens. Qin Guang did not dare to respond to Hualing's words. Instead, he changed the topic. Alright, you're still working on photocatalysts, right? How is it? Are there any substantial results? Can it be used in our Tongshan factory? Zhongyu plugged in the water bath pot and turned back to sit next to Qin Guang. Sai, let's not talk about this anymore. This time, Hualing and I actually came here to verify the results of our previous work with Teacher Zhuo's project team and show you our data. Zhongyu opened the Excel file on the computer. The screen was densely packed with data that the two of them had worked on in the past few months. It was generally divided into the following categories: pure photocatalysts for reducing COD, ammonia, nitrogen, and total phosphorus. Well, it was almost equal to zero. After photocatalysts catalyzed the breaking of macromolecular chains, the biochemical removal rate of the same kind of sewage in the pilot simulator had a slight effect, but it was not particularly obvious. Photocatalysts had almost no effect on the biochemical effect of phenol pollutants. Photocatalysts had almost no effect on the biochemical effect of ester pollutants. Photocatalysts had almost no effect on the removal of heavy metals from precipitated floccules. Qin Guang was too lazy to look at the data one by one. He only glanced at the removal rate that the two of them had converted. It was quite disappointing. Isn't this completely useless? Hualing finished adding the medicine and shrugged. Of course. Do you think it's so easy to develop a new kind of photocatalyst? Cabbages? Teacher Zhuo pondered in the laboratory for so long, and several other project teams worked together to barely develop a few stable structures. It's a pity that according to the results of Zhongyu and my on-site verification, it's still a long way from practical use. Zhongyu said, "You can't say that. Every new structure of a photocatalyst represents a new possibility. What we're doing now may seem ineffective, but maybe it will have a miraculous effect when it comes to certain special pollutants. Or maybe in industrial production, it will have a miraculous effect on the catalytic synthesis of certain chemical products. It can't be said that the new structure is meaningless and useful. It's just that we have to spend more time and energy to find the right use. It's just like when Edison invented the electric light. Before that, who would have thought that tungsten could be used as a filament for electric lights?" Qin Guang applauded. "What Zhongyu said makes sense." Hualing crossed her legs. "What's the use of that? Just like Zhongyu and I, we spent several months of effort, but in the end, we only verified that our new structure can't be used in the complex sewage environment of Tongshan factory. What we're doing now is to verify that the filament can be used in one of the thousands of elimination methods before tungsten. The real thing that can be remembered and the real result is always the last step. Everyone knew about Edison, but who knew about the failed researchers in the Edison project team? The elimination method we're doing is the most laborious and the most meaningless." Qin Guang couldn't refute this. Looking at the densely packed experimental data that the two of them had listed, it was indeed quite laborious. Every time they verified it, they had to compare the concentration of pollutants before and after the test, and they had to control the necessary conditions of the laboratory to a very precise degree. Eliminating all interference factors just to find a slight difference between the conditions with and without the photocatalyst, they had to spend several days or even a month testing hundreds or even thousands of data. This kind of work was boring and lacked a sense of accomplishment. Zhongyu was much more optimistic. "But as long as we can find something useful, for example, in the pharmaceutical synthesis section, if we can increase the product yield by 1%, that would be a profit of hundreds of millions of US dollars. Or in the field of environmental protection, if we can increase the removal rate by 1% and save 1% of operating costs, that would be a profit of hundreds of millions of US dollars. Hualing shrugged. "Anyway, with what we've done so far, it's hopeless. We'll have to see if Teacher Zhuo can bring back some surprises from the United States." After saying that, Hualing suddenly covered her mouth. She realized that she had spilled the beans. Qin Guang was slightly surprised. "Teacher Zhuo is coming back?" Hualing waved her hands. "Don't ask me, I don't know anything. Hey, what are you doing here today? Are you here to help us?" Qin Guang saw that she didn't want to say it, so he thought that there was no need to ask her. "If you don't want to say it, then forget it. I'll call and ask myself. Isn't that the same?" Hualing wanted to say something, but Zhongyu immediately covered her mouth and stuffed an experiment manual into Qin Guang's hands. "You look very free today. Aren't you a member of our lab? Why don't you learn and give it a try?" Qin Guang was thinking about Zhuo Jingxi. He missed her a little, but he didn't know how to face her. In the end, he still plucked up the courage to call Zhuo Jingxi, but he couldn't get through. Her phone was turned off. After that, Qin Guang returned to the laboratory and started messing around with the two of them. Maybe Zhuo Jingxi was on a plane, and Qin Guang planned to call her after a while. If Zhuo Jingxi really came back from the United States, it was reasonable for him to pick her up. Until the afternoon, Qin Guang still couldn't get through to her. However, he had to leave the lab temporarily, because a few uninvited guests had come to the factory. Song Ningyuan had personally led a team to meet Qin Guang. Qin Guang didn't want to talk to him, but Song Ningyuan was accompanied by the head of Tongshan's Environmental Protection Department, Deputy Chief Pang, whom he had already met once, and the Deputy Chief of the Municipal Administration. He had to meet them. Chapter 1035. Song Ningyuan was sitting casually in the conference room of the Tongshan factory office building. Although he had arrived in a hurry, there was no sign of anxiety on his face. Instead, he looked exceptionally calm. From time to time, he would whisper to Zheng He, who had come with him to join in the fun. From time to time, he would nod at the local officials of Tongshan who were sitting opposite him. On the way from Wujing to Tongshan, he had made one phone call after another. After receiving a clear answer, his mood had turned from gloomy to sunny, and he was indescribably satisfied. Qin Guang, let's see what you're going to do. Song Ningyuan crossed his legs, picked up the teacup in front of him, and took a comfortable sip. Things had taken a turn for the better. Even the tea in the factory tasted sweeter. On the other side, Qin Guang walked into the office surrounded by the middle management of the Tongshan factory. He went straight to the main seat, then looked to the side and saw Song Ningyuan and Zheng He looking at him meaningfully. Qin Guang frowned slightly, rolled his eyes and pointed at Zheng He. This is Mr. Song Ningyuan from Tiansong, right? The smug look on Song Ningyuan and Zheng He's faces disappeared in an instant, and they were both speechless. What the hell is going on? You actually mistook us for each other? Song Ningyuan suppressed his anger, stood up and said, Mr. Qin, you're forgetful. We've met once before. How can you mistake me for someone else? I'm Song Ningyuan, and this is Zheng He, a member of the board of directors of New Radiance Group. Our two companies have close cooperation, so today, we're here to see the Tongshan industrial factory that Tiansong Water Company is about to take over. Zheng He said sarcastically, What? Qin Guang, you've even forgotten your old classmate? Forget it, brother, let's not play dumb with him anymore. Qin Guang, my brother and I are cousins. This Tongshan industrial factory doesn't just belong to Tiansong Water Company. New Radiance Group also has a stake in it. Tongshan is also one of the top industrial bases of New Radiance Group in the country. The large feed factory beside the highway exit was New Ray's pig feed industrial base. Whether as a partner of Tiansong or considering the interests of my New Ray Group, I need to represent the company to come down and take a look at the situation of Tongshan industrial factory. Qin Guang pretended to be enlightened. Oh, I remember now. Sai, look at my memory. Zheng He, I have a deeper impression of your face, so I accidentally forgot it. But we're not old classmates, we're not in the same class, we're not in the same profession, and we don't have any friendship. Right? Then he suddenly changed the topic. He was still smiling a moment ago, but his face suddenly became serious. He looked at Song Ningyuan coldly. As for Song Ningyuan, Mr. Song, I don't know why you're here today, but I can tell you clearly that you're not welcome here. I don't care what will happen to Tongshan Industrial in the future, but at least for now, I'm still in charge here. It has nothing to do with you. And you, Zheng He, you have even less to do with me. Qin Guang thought to himself as he put on airs. Sure enough, people depended on fate. He, Song Ningyuan, and Zheng He were from the two big families, so their fates were definitely incompatible. First, he offended Zheng He because of Wenwen, and then he offended Song Ningyuan because of Tang Ying. Now, for the sake of Tongshan Industrial Factory, he brought these two groups together. Well, now that I'm in a different position, I'm no longer the ignorant person I used to be. Even if your Tiansong Water Group and New Ray Group come together, what can you do to me? I won't give you face today. What can you do? Not satisfied? Come and hit me? Song Ningyuan and Zheng He's expressions changed. They didn't expect Qin Guang's reaction to be so extreme. In the past, when you were barefooted, you were not afraid of wearing shoes. You liked to be unreasonable. Fine, we thought that you didn't understand the situation. But now you are a big shot. Show some of your magnanimity. Tongshan City's local government second-in-command saw that the situation wasn't looking good and quickly tried to smooth things over. Chief Qin, here's the thing. Previously, when Boss Ya was managing Xiaoguang Environmental Protection, it was really difficult for Tongshan Industrial Factory to meet the standards. We saw that Xiaoguang Environmental Protection was hopeless, so we held a national competition for the management unit of Tongshan Industrial Factory in advance. After a comprehensive selection by a team of experts, Tiansong Water Group won the bid. We've already reported the results to the provincial department, and the ministry has also approved it. In addition, New Ray Group is indeed a big taxpayer in Tongshan City. It's a great help to our local development. We also have the responsibility and obligation to provide a good and stable production and operating environment for New Ray Group. So, Qin Guang responded with an "oh." As soon as this guy spoke, Qin Guang understood. No wonder Song Ningyuan wanted to come and this second-in-command followed him. He was clearly on Song Ningyuan and Zheng He's side. Thinking of this, Qin Guang quietly turned his gaze to Deputy Chief Pang, who had been hiding in the corner pretending to be offline. This chubby guy gave Qin Guang a fleeting look, but he didn't dare to look directly at him. Sure enough, he also understood. Where there were people, there would be underworld. At least in Tongshan City, Tiansong Water Group was very well managed. There were many of his own people, so it was no wonder that Song Ningyuan still refused to give up. But so what? Qin Guang said, "I'm a dragon crossing the river and I'm a local snake. Besides, it's a competition of connections. Who doesn't have connections? I'm also a native of Dechuan province, so it's not like I can't find people, okay?" On the other side, Song Ningyuan saw that his people were in control of the situation, so he got up and said with a smile, "Qin Guang, I'll be frank. Today, I'm here for the operation rights of Tongshan Industrial Plant. Our previous bidding was in line with the 3 principles of fairness, and public supervision from all walks of life. Our Tiansong Water Group's technical and economic strength is the only one in the country that can perfectly solve the Tongshan Industrial Plant's long-standing problem. Although I don't know what means you used to pass the inspection the day before yesterday, Xiaoguang Environmental Protection's operating period will still expire in 4 months. Now, Xiaoguang Environmental Protection and my Tiansong Water Group have 2 choices in front of us. Either we wait for Xiaoguang Environmental Protection's last 4 months of operating rights to smoothly hand over, or I'll make the decision and represent Tiansong Water Group to provide appropriate compensation to your company, and we'll complete the handover procedures ahead of time. Qin Guang, we did have some personal grudges before, but I think we should put aside such meaningless personal feelings in the business world. I came with sincerity, and my compensation proposal can also reduce your losses. I don't need to pay tens of millions for nothing, but I'm also responsible for Tongshan City, and I hope to solve the Tongshan Industrial Plant's cancerous problem as soon as possible." Qin Guang pretended to have just understood. "I see. Then don't I have to thank you?" Song Ningyuan grinned. "I don't dare to thank you. It's just business after all. But without my compensation proposal, you'd still have nothing after 4 months." The second-in-command of Tongshan also tried to persuade him. "Chief Qin, Mr. Song is right. We also know that there's something fishy about you taking over Xiaoguang Environmental Protection, so we came up with this proposal after a last-minute discussion. It's also for your consideration, Chief Qin." Qin Guang looked at Song Ningyuan with a burning gaze, then looked at Xieyu who was standing behind him. "Previously, this manager Xie behind you offered me 50 million, but I rejected it." Song Ningyuan saw that he had relented, and thought that he had been moved. He was secretly delighted. After all, it's only 4 months. Although 50 million is not considered low, I can personally make the decision. We can discuss this further. I guarantee that my company's evaluation department will do their best to find a figure that will satisfy you, okay? Qin Guang grinned at him and held up 2 fingers. Song Ningyuan thought he was going to add 20 million. 70 million? Qin Guang shook his head. Song Ningyuan sucked in a cold breath. "Don't tell me you want 200 million? Qin Guang continued to shake his head. "What do you mean? 2 billion? Don't joke around." Qin Guang grinned. "I mean, you're very stupid. If I wanted to sell, I would have discussed the transfer fee with you when that manager Xie of yours came. Do you need to go through all this trouble now?" Song Ningyuan's face turned green and white, cursing in his heart. He felt like a scholar meeting a soldier, unable to reason with him. He hated this kind of idiot the most when doing business. "Are you crazy? Can't you talk it out properly?" Zheng He slammed the table. "Qin Guang, what right do you have to scold me?" Qin Guang turned to look at him. "The table in front of you is made of gold-threaded nanmu. I bought it for more than 7 million and now it's cracked. Do as you see fit." Zheng He said anxiously, "Which eye of yours saw it crack?" Qin Guang was expressionless. "You're the young master of new light. Don't you understand this? The value of a real luxury item will plummet even if it's just a crack. Just wait for my lawyer's letter. Song Ningyuan interrupted him. We're here to talk to you about Tongshan Industrial Plant today, not about the table. Chen Guang looked back at Song Ningyuan with a puzzled expression. Strange. Was what I said just now not clear enough? Or did you not understand? Or are you really stupid? Song Ningyuan suppressed his anger. Chen Guang, business is business. Why are you looking for trouble? To tell you the truth, I'm determined to get Tongshan Industrial Plant. Really? Then I won't give up an inch. Song Ningyuan's mouth twitched. I know what you're thinking. You think you can renegotiate the operating period by getting Lu Chemical to invest in the reconstruction? Stop dreaming. The deduction of Xiaoguang Environmental Protection's term was done in accordance with the law and regulations. Xiaoguang Environmental Protection has been completely eliminated. Even if you get Lu Chemical, it's useless. Do you think the bidding is a joke? You want to renegotiate? The second in command of Tongshan also coughed lightly and said, Mr. Chen, Mr. Song is right. Even if it's rebuilt, Xiaoguang Environmental Protection doesn't have the right to operate it. Unless you form a new company and change the main operator. But in this case, we have already completed the bidding for BOT operation. Tiansong Water Group won the bid. This is a sure thing. Chen Guang watched the two of them sing and cooperate with each other. They even blocked his way out. Sure enough, they came prepared. In fact, he also had a headache. Although Song Ningyuan and the local officials' words were unpleasant to hear, they did stand on the right side. Now that the public opinion had exploded, although he had turned things around twice and barely stabilized the situation, Tongshan Industrial Plant was still inevitably in the eyes of the people of the country. He couldn't risk the world's condemnation to engage in under-the-table operations. No matter how hateful Song Ningyuan and Tiansong Water Group were, there was no denying that they did have a way in the water treatment industry. They were worthy of being the strongest leader in the country and had a great influence in the industry. Chen Guang, I'll say something you don't want to hear. Even if you really rebuild Tongshan Plant with the Lu Corporation, do you really think it's so easy to maintain a profit while operating up to the standard? I think you should be very clear about how difficult it is to treat the water in Tongshan Plant in the past few days. It's not that I, Song Ningyuan, want to brag, but looking at the whole country, I really don't think any company has the confidence to say that they can definitely operate stably and meet the standard. As for adding medicine, we don't need to beat around the bush. We have to add medicine every few days. The cost of adding medicine is millions and the cost of discharging mud is millions. This is a bottomless pit that can't be filled. Chen Guang, you have to think twice. Song Ningyuan continued to pursue the victory. On the other side, the second in command of Tongshan also stood up and spoke. Mr. Chen, we all know about what happened a few days ago. Before I came here, I also talked to a few nearby solid waste treatment stations and landfills. Just like the chemical sludge you used before, their capacity is completely saturated. It really isn't a long-term solution in the future. Chen Guang, I'll be so bold as to make a decision again. 80 million. I can't go any higher. Transfer it now and the transfer fee is 80 million. How about it? Just treat it as me paying for you for free. Although Song Ningyuan was annoying, he was also a talent. He was well versed in the art of negotiation. He felt that he had finally pulled Chen Guang into the mindset of a normal person. He finally had the upper hand in the negotiation, and he increased the price appropriately to further hammer Chen Guang's bottom line. Zheng He had been watching the show from the side from the beginning to the end. He also interrupted at the right time. Chen Guang, a wise man submits to circumstances. Giving others convenience is also giving yourself convenience. Take a step back and the world will be wide open. Let's not talk about anything else. You've seen the Tongshan River below. As a person, you can't go against your conscience. You have to be responsible for ordinary people. Actually, Zheng He didn't understand the sense of responsibility of a commoner. He just knew in his heart that Qin Guangzhou would be at a disadvantage and so would Qin Guangzhou. In any case, seeing Qin Guangzhou at a disadvantage made him feel good. Aren't your fists hard? Aren't your connections strong? But you claim to be a good person. As long as you claim to be a good person, you won't be able to get over the hurdle in your heart. Sooner or later, you'll have to admit defeat. I came here today to follow my cousin and watch you admit defeat in front of everyone, to wash away your shame. Song Ningyuan coughed lightly, indicating for Zheng He to restrain himself. Qin Guang turned to look at him, his heart burning with anger. What are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? Coming here to act cool? All of you are echoing each other. White faces, black faces, flowery faces, red faces, all of you are here. Are you acting in a play or singing a Beijing opera? If a tiger doesn't show its might, do you guys really think I'm a big white cat? You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.